Hello and welcome to the Super Show. I am Alex Jones, your host for today. A special episode because we are going to be going through all of the awards, the announcements from this year's Game Awards, which was a few days ago at this point. And as always, I am joined by an amazing gentleman. We know him as the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson of the video game world. I am, of course, talking about Jamie, my one and only co-host.
Lord.
How
Where
are
did
you
that
doing?
come from? I'm doing great. I just don't know where that mantra came from. Surely if I was the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson of the video games industry, then the last time you'd have seen me would have been live from the Game Awards, as I was no doubt, presenting an award for 5 to 6 minutes to a poor game developer who then got to celebrate said award for 20 to 30 seconds. You're clearly playing some kind of gag on me right now, but given the amazing powers that Discord has to cut out noise, the joke's lost on me.
I hope that the people... That was some lovely classical music. I was playing you off, so you'd...
You were playing me off, great. When I saw the mic, when I saw the phone being raised to the mic, I was like, I'm being played off right now, aren't I?
I hope that the people at home could hear that. They probably couldn't. Maybe, like you said, I think Discord is probably too good and it will cut it all out.
But I don't know. Discord can pick up something. Like, do you remember the time that we found out that every time I told a joke, I could do this afterwards, and that people would be able to hear it because, of course, we stream out your Discord. It's not a thing I go back to very often, but every now and then I will have to slip in the odd.
Rightfully so. It is a fantastic feature to have and be able to mess around with. But no, of course, I am making light of the fact that at the Game Awards this year, Jeff decided that if anyone spoke, to be fair, any receiver of an award spoke for over sort of like 20 seconds, they would immediately get played off. So apparently, Classy Cat's telling me in chat they did hear it.
Good.
So yeah, that's all good.
It was like the Family Guy meme where they're holding up the range of colours and it's okay and not okay. Except in Jeff Keighley's world, it's how big of a celebrity you are. The more famous you are, the longer you can go on without being interrupted.
About anything you want. It doesn't even need to be relevant. But
Started in one Marvel movie and now want to talk for 3 minutes about how you broke your leg. Go for it.
Yeah, I see. I have a little bit of sympathy for Simu Liu because, of course, he did the same injury that I did. So when he came out with his little boot, I was like, "You and me, mate. You and me. We're in the same little grouping."
Yeah. Well, okay, maybe a bit of a stretch to put you in the same grouping as Simu Liu in some respects, but as far as Achilles injuries go, you're right there with them.
That is exactly what I meant. Hey, look, we are a gaming podcast, in case you didn't figure that out already. Today, like I said, is going to be a special, and we're going to be going through the Game Awards. Not much else. We are available on YouTube, where some people watching us live right now, but you can also catch us across podcasting platforms, not gaming platforms.
If you keep a close enough eye out.
Maybe. I'm talking Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, and we are on paisleyradio.com Thursdays at 10 p.m, Mondays at 10 p.m. as well. You can also reach out to us on Twitter or now X at SuperShowPod, or you can go over to our Patreon, patreon.com/SuperShow. But with all that good stuff out of the way about where to catch us and how to catch us, do you know what, Jamie? I think what we need to do before we get into the Game Awards is just have a little catch up about, what's been going on for us in this past week outside of Game Awards. I want to know what you've been playing, what you've been doing.
Okay, I'll keep it brief because I feel like the Game Awards are going to be the real bread and butter of what we've got here today, and at least half of the things I brought to talk about in terms of my catch up are not going to set the world on fire, and that's because, as we discussed, as a piece of news last week, Fortnite dropped a whole bunch of new game modes. One on on a subsequent day. I think it was like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday last week, something like that. I have so far dipped my toe into the Fortnite Festival game mode, which is the one developed by Harmonix, and I don't have a huge amount to say about it at the moment. It seems perfectly suitable for what it is. I don't think it's going to set the world on fire. I think is that the second time I've used that analogy now in like 30 seconds. Because it feels kind of basic. Like there's this daily rotation of songs that you can play, but there's about 8 of them. And yes, they switch up, but if you kind of sit down for a big session, you've got about half an hour of music before you're like, should we do Lady Gaga again? And someone says no, and then the session's over. And if you want to buy those tracks so that you can use them, indefinitely going forward, it costs about like £3 a track.
Oh, wow.
Which I get it. Like it's a difficult economy. If we used to pay in the days of iTunes 79p or 99p to listen to a track, how much you have to pay to play a track? It's got some nifty things in terms of presentation, where everyone gets, because it's a part of Fortnite, everyone gets brought in with their skins, and you can do all your emotes. So if you're ever playing a song that, let's say you're playing "Bad Guy" by Billie Eilish, and you chose to do the quote unquote lead guitar part, just to find out that there isn't actually a lead guitar part, you can basically just floss for like 90 seconds at a time, and then come in, do the little do bit, and then be on your way. It's fine, but it's all done with a controller. Imagine Guitar Hero, but with each of the inputs mapped out to a button on either the face buttons or the D-pad with no strumming. It feels a little bit weird, but Harmonix have clearly tried. They've reused some assets from Fuser and Rock Band 4 in some clever ways. I hope it gets supported. There's been talk of supporting plastic instruments in the future. I think that would be cool if this was a place where the plastic instrument revolution could live on in this weird kind of offshoot of Fortnite. But yeah, we'll see. As for now, it's fine, but unremarkable. And it's not the least bit surprising that it is already, by some margin, the least popular of Epic's official Fortnite modes. I'll also just say, before I throw toss the ball back to you, that a little update for anyone keeping tabs on the great Cyberpunk race of 2023. I have done almost all of the base game now. Like, I've done every major side quest that has a chain, with a certain, like, Judy's and Panams and Rivers and Carey's. I've done all of that stuff. I'm at the point of no return, and I've started Phantom Liberty, so I will be finishing that game in its entirety probably in the next couple of days.
What? I mean, I didn't stand a chance. I didn't put it here because I was going to sneak it in about 2 weeks' time, but I actually played about 4 or 5 hours of Cyberpunk as well.
Okay, I think I played 4 or 5 hours yesterday morning, and then went on to play another 8 to 9 hours yesterday afternoon and evening. So.
That is why you're just going to leave me in the dust. But no, I played a decent chunk of Cyberpunk as well, so I was feeling good about myself until the reality of life hit me.
I'm sorry.
Anything? No, sorry, that was it. Yeah, you were saying.
I'll toss the rock in your direction.
I too played a bit of one of the new Fortnite modes. I played some Lego Fortnite because I thought, why not give it a go? I'd heard good things. It looked quite nice. It's quite simplistic. It's, as you'd expect. It is a very nicely Legofied sort of like Fortnite iteration, if you like. I like what they've done with it. I like how the building modes and how that whole world works. I'm a little kind of, I don't know why, I thought it was going to be more like MMO, as in you were going to have loads of other players just kicking it around and doing stuff in an open server kind of situation, which it's not. It's much more of it's because I was imagining Fortnite Battle Royale kind of meets a Lego Survival kind of Minecraft kind of thing, where they were going to put a bunch of people together and have you, crafting, building, whatever. I guess maybe that wouldn't have worked, but it's a little bit emptier than I would have liked, just because it's playing on your own. It is sort of you against a kind of limited environment, and you're just building, places, little huts and villages, and recruiting NPC villagers to come and live with you. But it's fun. It's cute. It kept me entertained for a couple of hours. It kept the kids entertained for a few hours, sort of in the sandbox mode, just sort of playing it and enjoying. So, yeah, no, I like what they're doing.
It's been popular so far. I think so far, at least for the first couple of days, it's been more popular than either of the two battle royale modes that are sort of default to Fortnite. I think maybe if you combine the two, which are battle royale and zero build, which are now broken out into individual modes, then maybe it kind of rivals Lego Fortnite. But Lego Fortnite certainly, perhaps unsurprisingly as well, the one that's got off to the hottest start.
It's definitely got. I think it's definitely got legs. Like, I can already see that if you had a couple of mates on there playing with you, and you were doing, because there's even like caves that you can go and explore. So there's like the dungeon aspect of it that you can get involved with, which is a nice end to play around with. But I think on your own, as I've tried it, it needs other people to jump in there with you, as it is not surprising at all.
Yeah, the same with all survival games, right? Like, the most fun is had when other people are there to have fun with.
Exactly.
Have you had any crashes when you've been playing it?
No, I've had a couple of little bugs, like more graphical issues and glitches, like menu items not highlighting when they're supposed to and things, but I've not had any crashes.
Okay.
I spent a few days just simply unable to, or no, maybe a day. It's just simply unable to access it, where it didn't give me the option to. Because the way it works is you create a world, kind of like Minecraft style, and it generates either a sandbox or a survival world. But you have to do that in order to access a game, and which simply wouldn't let me do that. And I think that was because the sheer number of people that were accessing the servers and things, it was just like locked up.
Okay.
But the next day, it's worked fine ever since that.
I mean, I only ask because I think if I experienced a crash while I was playing Lego Fortnite, I'd be really worried that my console was bricked.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah. So
Can't believe I just totally fell for that as well. Like, I just bought it and set you up so beautifully.
do you know, it was the only one I had. I might have pivoted after you took the question so earnestly, but
stuck with it.
Not the easiest, it turns out.
There you go. Well, hey, that's all I've got to say anyway for games that I've played. Like, except for Cyberpunk, like I said, but I'm well behind you. I've got to catch up, but I really won't. But before we actually,
take a while.
It will. Before we get into the Game Awards and we start talking about it, I want to give a shout out to some people that have joined us in chat. I want to give a shout out to who we got: Magni, the Funky Penguin, Shari Apps, Classy Cat, Rodrigo, Nick Leaks, Jesper Kamner Nielsen is in the chat, Ice Knock Rock Salt, Timmy Bew. Hello guys, thank you so much for joining us on the live. Later on, after we've talked about a couple of awards, we will give a shout out some more of our patrons, but we're not going to do it now because that would be putting all the good stuff out right at the beginning. I think we should dive into a few awards and a few sort of not controversies, soft controversies. We'll jump into those first, and we'll talk about some of that first.
Never a Jeff Keighley show cannot go by without Twitter managing to come up with at least a couple of soft controversies, and they did so just as billed this year, this time around.
They did. I mean, I would say I think he got off very well this year. It was compared to like what it normally is, and compared to the couple of times they've had stage invaders and stuff like that. I think not that much happened. So maybe some people were sort of reaching a little bit. But no, it was a very good one. So first of all, before the actual show started, we had some awards sort of kick off. I'm going to try and get this right so I don't get this wrong. So Chris Judge was the first thing, wasn't he? When the actual show kicked off, I want to say.
Yes, Chris Judge opened the main show because they did the joke almost immediately where they pretended to play him off because obviously he had a famously long speech last year that I think was it just shy of 9 minutes?
Oh my god, yes, it was, and it was. I stopped watching it. I couldn't. I tried to watch the whole thing last year when he was talking, and because I was watching on catch up, I just skipped over it. I was like, I can't listen to all of this, Chris. I loved you in Stargate SG-1, and I really like God of War, but I can't sit here and sit through this whole thing.
It's a bit gruesome, especially. If like sometimes speeches are long because someone has a lot to say, sometimes speeches are long because someone's meandering and they are trying to get through everything, and they continue to kind of turn a corner with each new chunk of their speech and remember a new portion of their life full of people that they need to thank. Although Chris Judge did, in his just shy of 9 minutes last year, I think forget to thank his wife, which he fortunately made up for on stage this year by giving her a shout out. But
Yeah.
Are you diving straight in at the main show?
No, I'm not. I was just trying to get my feet under me effectively, so I can say that let's hop back half an hour in time, because in the pre-show. I was just double checking that because in the pre-show we had some awards and we had a couple of announcements that we'll just touch on briefly first. We're going to go through this in chronological order to keep it nice and easy. But yeah, we had an announcement for Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, which is getting a remake, which I'm sure a lot of people will be really excited about. That's something I never actually played the original, so I'm quite keen to hop on that when the remake comes out. Tell you what, stop me if you want to jump on anything, because otherwise I'm going to rattle through the ones that I don't have much to say about. So you can sort of go, no, Josie, I want to talk about that.
Okay, yeah. Best
Family Game, the announcement for the award was next, which was won by Super Mario Wonder, which I've not really heard or seen much about Super Mario Wonder. I will say very quietly that I have bought it because my kids are getting it for Christmas, but I haven't played it yet. I'm guessing you have.
I have not. I'm in the same boat.
Haven't?
I will be playing Super Mario Wonder on December 25th.
But in pure irony terms, I love this every time I see him talking about Mario. Doug Bowser collected the award, which always makes me laugh because of his name, but it's great.
Yeah, he narrowly beat out Nathan Donkey. I was trying to come up with a good name for a good joke for someone whose name is Donkey Kong, and I just didn't come up with one in time.
It's tough. It's tough. Then we had an announcement for Pony Island 2 Panda Circus, which is a game from Daniel Mullins. This one looked kind of cool. I remember seeing this and thinking it looked freaky and cool, but it kind of, something I've never heard of. I've not heard any other games of Daniel Mullins.
Did you not even hear of Pony Island 1? Seemed like something that'd be right up Jonesy Street.
I think that's what I saw the trailer for this and I was like, that looks pretty cool. And then I was like, what the hell is Pony Island?
I recommend you look up Pony Island 1 because I think you'd get really into some of sort of the meta things that are going on there, some of which are very much hinted at with the kind of the weird mashup of genres and live action imagery in this trailer. He made a game in between those called Inscription that came out a couple of years ago, and it was very well received. It actually won some Game of the Year awards at certain publications, but I think wasn't super mainstream because fundamentally it was a bit of a deck builder, I guess you could almost had like roguelike deck building elements. And while I know some games like Slay the Spire have kind of taken over the internet with that combination of genres, Inscription was a bit of a weird sell. I'd imagine this will be too, but I just wanted to say that this was the first in what ended up being a large number of games announced across the show and the pre-show. That the first thing I pointed out to you and Chris when we were kind of touching base the next morning was how many amazing developers or developers who are coming off of amazing games chose to use the Game Awards to announce their next projects from the indie scene. And like Pony Island 2 and the two games that we're about to talk about next, not the kind of things that set social media on fire, but when you look at why it's a big deal, I think most people go like, oh, okay, yeah, cool.
Yeah. Next up, we had a reveal for The Rise of the Golden Idol, which is something I'm looking forward to because I played, what was the first one? The Case of the Golden Idol?
Case of the Golden Idol, yeah.
That was one that you recommended, which is why I played after you recommended. And yeah, very cool game, very fun, like little detective kind of like solve the mystery game, but in a kind of a cool way.
I was staring at the trailer going, I know this art style. And then,
if you haven't played it, it's a nice little point and click sort of like solve the mystery kind of game, but split out nicely into sort of multiple levels and then unravels a whole mystery over the course of the game. So yeah, more of that sounds very cool. Then we had a trailer for Usual June. I do not remember that one at all. I must admit, I don't even know what that is. Usual June.
It was the one with it kind of I don't know how it wasn't quite the cell shaded, but the slightly animated look, third person action sequences, female protagonist, kind of quirky text driven dialogue.
Okay.
Again, I know I'm describing a lot of games. People who watch all of these shows feel like they've probably seen. I think the notable thing here is that Finji are involved, who have had their hands on between like A Night in the Woods and Chicory and Tunic, some of the best independently developed video games of the last let's say 8 to 10 years. So fingers crossed for another banger.
We then had the award for innovation in accessibility, which went to Forza Motorsport for their game, which is fair play. I have not played it, so I don't know how accessible it is. I'm going to assume very.
I mean,
they won the award for it.
They said that blind people could play it, and as far as I'm concerned, if a blind person can play a racing game, then you've done something right in accessibility.
I must admit, they said that, and I did think how. Like, I couldn't. I was trying to imagine what that means. The only thing I can imagine is that there's noises to tell you when you're leaving the track, to sort of set your road positioning, maybe.
Yeah, they must have to use different audio cues to tell you sort of, like maybe they can tell you how far away from the edge of each track you are and like how far away from, or maybe it's like a rally thing where you have like a driver next to you. It's like 45 degrees, like telling you when turns are coming up and how far away they are.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
I don't know. We should probably know more about it, but a shout out to them. And it's cool that accessibility is being prioritized enough by enough teams that. Like I played some games like Sony first-party games at the moment, doing crazy things with accessibility options, and still not leading the pack according to these awards. So
yeah,
very cool.
Absolutely. Talking about accessibility, then we had Disney the game in the shape of Harmonium the musical, which I like. for the fact that this was announced in the pre-show, I was quite surprised because it genuinely looked like it could be an advert for a Disney musical. Like it was pretty impressive. Yeah, and I had a young female character like signing, and then when she was, I guess she was asleep, she was then sort of singing, and the world was coming to life. Some really cool stuff. Nice little game coming to Netflix and Game Pass, which I've not really delved into the whole Netflix gaming thing outside of playing Oxenfree for a little bit, so I need to have a look at that and see how much
it seems to be confusing a lot of people. Like I saw a tweet that went semi-viral a couple of weeks ago when the Grand Theft Auto games, the old school trilogy, came to Netflix, and someone like quote tweeted it, being like, "How the fuck does this work?" Because the headline was just like, "GTA San Andreas is coming to Netflix," which some people just go, "What?" But yeah, it's a platform we're gonna have to get used to. In fact, it appeared plenty of times just in this pre-show. Like it's a platform that more and more people are looking at closely.
Absolutely. We then had a trailer for Windblown, which is coming to PC 24. This is from the creators of Dead Cells, so I'm guessing that Jamie and Chris will be excited about this one.
I thought this was rad. Again, like this was one of those things where I was like, "This is a pre-show game," because again, I saw that art style and there was something slightly familiar about it, but I didn't know exactly what it was. And then it said from the creators of Dead Cells, and I was like, "Okay, cool." And they've gone for a slightly more isometric perspective compared to like the 2D sort of side-scrolling perspective of Dead Cells. Obviously, a completely new world and sort of characters and enemy designs and so on and so forth. But I mean, they made one of the best feeling action games, point blank, of the last decade, in my opinion. So, yeah, you can put that face. I stand by that. Like,
that's cool. That's cool.
As hard as crunchy 2D side-scrolling melee combat seems like it probably is to do, Dead Cells was one of the best feeling examples of all time.
It did do a good job of that. I'll give you that.
And so yeah, this is like give them another crack at it. Like make another game. I'm there for 100%.
And it seems so obvious, like making a game totally in your wheelhouse after you were so critically acclaimed for a game like in exactly that style. I was like, yeah, like come on.
Yeah,
that's such an easy decision to make for them, right? Not to go crazy and do anything too different. We had a trailer for Thrasher, which is from the devs of Thumper. Don't really know much about that. Didn't play Thumper, so I apologise. Also, I will say this: I for us in the UK, the show started at about 1:30. The pre-show, I believe it was, and I think the actual show started at 2. So I apologise if some of my memory is spotty because I didn't go back and watch the whole show again. So
I've watched the whole thing through twice now.
Oh, I watched the last hour in the morning, but that was after I'd had 3 hours sleep, so it probably wasn't the best time.
3 hours.
Yeah, it was rough. There you go. Because I had to get up and do family stuff and kid stuff or whatever. So yeah,
man, you should just save the whole thing to the next day. I'm proud of you.
I get so excited though for like watching it, and it was and then because I started watching the pre-show, I was like, I've got to finish this now, and then I didn't. So
it was a good pre-show.
It was at the no, but I mean the whole thing was fantastic. The pre-show was surprisingly good. I thought for a minute had they got confused and started the show, and it's just not, and then like labeled it wrong or something. But anyway, let's move on because next we had some crossover DLC coming to Dave the Diver and Dredge, which is I guess makes sense. You know, 2 games in a similar space, but I thought that was really cool. Like I love it when 2 indies can come together and make some crossover DLC. That's very cool.
Absolutely, 2 of the best indie games of the year, no less, and they're both just acknowledging that they had fishing as a shared attribute, and those worlds colliding. That could be cool.
Absolutely. World of Goo 2 has been announced after a 15-year wait. I do not remember World of Goo 1, but hey, the trailer looked fun, so there we go. It looks very mobile game.
It looked like more. Well, it's funny that the first World of Goo, the only way in which I'd actually ever played it up to this point was on a mobile, was the iOS port that came. But I'll be honest, to my eye, as not a massive World of Goo fan, this just looked like more World of Goo. But I gather that there are some people out there who are super passionate about World of Goo. It's kind of it came out at a very interesting time in terms of the increased sort of popularization and widespread, or I guess mainstream appeal of indie games. Like when you think about, I think there were kind of waves, weren't there? Like when you think about the early Xbox Live Arcade stuff with like Castle Crashers and Braid, and then you had kind of like that sort of Super Meat Boy and Limbo period in like 2010. Yes. and then he went through to 2012 with like Hotline Miami and Papers, Please. Um,
Definitely seems to like ebb and flow, doesn't it?
So World of Goo was like one of the first ebbs back in 2008. But again, like the kind of the channels for buying and playing indie games weren't really as established or developed as they are now. They absolutely still existed. Yeah, it did kind of, it kind of was on the cusp. Not necessarily the cutting edge. I don't know. Maybe that's a bit too far. But it came at a very interesting time and place for independently developed games. So I think it getting a fully fledged sequel 15 years later, and getting to kind of almost close out the pre-show with it, like, I think it's a nice touch.
Yeah, no, that is. I think that sounds fair. But then, yes, we did close out the pre-show. We got into the Game Awards proper. It was a very exciting time. First up, we got Chris Judge, who came back. As we talked about briefly earlier, he won for performance for Kratos, and he gave a 9-minute speech, which I believe at the time we said last year it was like it was his night, because it was like when. Chris Judge, great actor, is great in a lot of the stuff that he's been in, but he's never going to win I shouldn't say never. He's unlikely to win like an Oscar or like a Golden Globe at this point, but he is a very good voice actor, and he did a fantastic job with God of War. And so we really think he took that and ran with it. And so he did this like 9-minute epic long speech last year. So I think, in good humour, he was invited back by Jeff and to open the show and to give out the first award in the main show, which was for the best performance, which I think probably also gave us the biggest controversy of the night. It's definitely the one that I've heard the most about, which is that he took a really unfair potshot at the developers of Call of Duty, because he made a joke in which he said that his speech at last year's Game Awards was longer than the campaign of Call of Duty, which I thought was funny, apt, and worked. And I do not think he meant that aimed at anyone. It wasn't like at the devs or whatever. It was at the people, the top guys who released Call of Duty. I don't think you can actually say that he was aiming that at like the devs themselves, sort of the people that make the game. No controversy. Anything to say?
I mean, it's a really tricky one. I think some of my feelings about whether or not a joke like this is appropriate or could ever be appropriate remind me of my overall sentiment around so many of the controversies that arose at this year's Game Awards and Game Awards in years gone by. And which, without jumping the gun, is that there's an element of you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't to a lot of this when it comes to how long speeches are, when it comes to the volume of time devoted to game reveals versus the volume of time devoted to awards being given out and acceptance speeches and so on and so forth. Like, Jeff Keighley really, in terms of balancing the audience that he has, and let's be real, Jeff Keighley isn't just playing to the hardcore audience of people that talk about shit on Twitter after it's done anymore. He's talking to a much bigger audience. There is a kind of like a lose-lose situation that plays out in a lot of these things. I don't think Chris Judge meant anything harsh by it, and I think it's the kind of gentle ribbing that does feel like it exists in other places, like in other industries, but sometimes I guess it just gets really hard, because behind every joke like this is the story or the reality of the fact. And the reality behind this year's Call of Duty was that it did have an extremely troubled development, and behind every troubled development are troubled developers. There are people who lost sleep over this game. There are people who worried they might lose their job, or maybe even did lose their job over the development of this game or future Call of Duties. There are very real consequences as a result of the kind of things that end up being ammunition for jokes when it comes to an industry as volatile as the games industry. Do I think that means that you should never be able to joke about like bad games or bad developments or processes or things that have gone wrong? No. But maybe there is a time and a place. Like maybe
this was it.
Seen as
Game Awards, a gentle ribbing from an actor about how long your taking the mick out of himself about how long his speech, that is the time to do it.
But then you can make the argument that the Game Awards are a celebration of games. They're a celebration of games where not one person managed to even devote a single word to the tens of thousands of people who lost their jobs in the games industry this year.
Yes.
And instead, we got someone out there who doesn't really know how the games industry works at all, apart from what his call sheet said every time he, woke up one morning and saw what was happening on the God of War schedule, making a joke at the expense of developers who were, for all intents and purposes, fucked around by suits higher up, making bad decisions and, poor financially incentivized decision making across the board. That probably led to a lot of crunch and a lot of frustration, a lot of hard work being thrown out the window.
Do you not think the joke is actually against the suits though? Is because that's how I took it. Isn't that you can't ever say it's on the developers because they're the ones who, at the end of the day, they'll make the game they're given the time and space to make. And if they're not given the time and space to make a longer game, they can't make a longer game. So for me, it's
but the suits never pay the price.
No, they don't. You're absolutely right about that, and they absolutely should. But I don't think his joke for me. I don't think if I was a developer of COD, I think I would have been like, yeah, Chris, they screwed my COD that I was working on.
I don't think I'd have been like that.
Oh, okay, that's fair.
If I worked on the game and I'd been screwed over because the game I was working on had been ripped out from underneath me and vanished in thin air, and I was given another game that I wasn't supposed to be working on, and I was misled about the nature of the game I was working on, in so much as it went from a piece of DLC to a fully fledged release, and I had to work overtime and watch myself and my colleagues lose our minds and pull our hair out as we met these ridiculous contractual obligations or whatever, met all these ridiculous standards and things that we had to meet. Also, our publishers, who are themselves in the middle of being bought for tens of billions of dollars, so the CEOs and various other members of the board could line their pockets with even more money while we were all doing this on the ground floor. And then a voice actor came out, and the opening joke of the celebration of the games of video games in 2023. The first joke told of the entire night was at the expense of my hard work. I'd say, go fuck yourself.
I don't think it's at the expense of your hard. Well, no, okay, we'll have to agree to disagree.
I think it literally is.
No, but it's not, is it? You can't. I don't think it was. I don't think if you joke about the length of a game, you're joking about the developers on the ground every day who make the games, because that's just something they have zero control over. I can see what you mean. I can see why it would almost like open an old wound, if you know what I mean. It would make you feel bitter about the whole process, but I don't think you'd be like,
Jonesy, but we've got evidence, because I can tell you right now that there are a lot of developers who work at Sledgehammer Games or other parts of Activision on Twitter right now who are upset, and I can tell you that on the flip side,
Bobby
Kotick probably doesn't even know that this joke was told. So there is evidence. There is evidence that beyond my hypothetical that people are upset.
I think one positive about where he told it was we heard it on the internet, and obviously it was played out. In some respects, I think the Game Awards is not going to have the any random dev that worked on a game. It's going to have the heads of companies. It's going to have the people that are high up. I know there are people in the audience from Xbox who are going to have heard that straight from Chris Judge. So so I do think
Phil Spencer was in the crowd.
Exactly,
he owns that company now.
Exactly. Well, so his game from his company that he owns that now is an exclusive. Well, in a number of years could be an exclusive. He was a joke at the opening of the Game Awards. So I agree with you. Whilst someone like Bobby Kotick, who's going to be out in March anyway, probably doesn't even know the joke happened. I bet you Phil Spencer remembers that joke happening. And hey, hopefully in future, that does something. But I get where you're coming from. I don't agree. Maybe I've watched Ricky Gervais hold the Golden Globes too many times. Everything seems to be fair game that I'm like, have a little dig.
Maybe there's something about the games industry compared to the films industry, though, that for some reason, those that are either in it or around it or just onlookers, there does feel like sometimes there's an increased degree of sensitivity. Like when we hear about Ricky Gervais making jokes about The Tourist, he's poking fun at Johnny Depp and Angelina Jolie, not at the gaffer who gave up his summer to work on that film.
Yeah, exactly. Which everyone who works on that film is.
Yeah, but it feels different at the games industry. For some it feels different.
It can. I think it can.
Felt like, and it can feel like punching down when you're on stage in a big shiny jacket. It can feel like punching down.
Yeah, okay, I suppose so. Or punching across because he obviously works on games and he's a VA, he's a voice actor as well. So, all right.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Punch.
we move on. So he presented the award to Neil Newbon for the best performance, which was for his character in Baldur's Gate 3. Obviously, a lot of people happy about that. Baldur's Gate 3, a lot of nominations throughout the whole night, so it was sure to win some awards. We then had... Oh, to be fair, I can't remember if it happened this early on, but this was the start of something being up because we heard music played relatively quickly after. I think he was the first one. Even it was the first award. Music was played pretty quickly after he sort of did his thank you, his acceptance speech, which at the time I didn't think much of at this point. But would go on to sort of become a bit of a thing later on in the night because it actually got a little bit ridiculous. But hey, we'll chat a little bit more and then we'll come back to it.
Okay.
Then we have Matthew McConaughey, who came out to announce that he is going to be a voice actor in a new game called Exodus, which is coming from an Austin-based developer called Archetype Entertainment. Obviously, he is from Texas himself, Matthew McConaughey, so I was probably very excited to go and announce that. The biggest surprise of the night, I'm going to say, came next. Sorry, did you want to chat? Did you want to chat McConaughey?
All I was going to say was how I thought that was one of the worst segments of the entire night. I think Matthew McConaughey showed up, didn't, clearly had no awareness of, like, maybe there wasn't a dress code, but not even a suggestion that he had given any thought to a potential dress code.
Right.
Debuted a trailer that, as far as I could tell, didn't include his voice at all.
I couldn't hear him in it either. I was going to say, yeah.
I was like, oh, we're going to hear Matthew McConaughey's voice at some point. Nope. Which then, and again, I've got to be, all due respect to Archetype Entertainment, and I want them to take the time with Exodus, and I hope it's the best possible end product. But I also think that the alpha gameplay they tacked on to the end of that CG trailer, while it is a nice touch to show people where the game was at, I thought that gameplay was too early. They shouldn't have done it.
Right, which is, yes.
I just didn't think it showed very well.
I can't remember the alpha stuff that well, but the actual the stuff before that I remember actually was quite intriguing because it was something that the game looks very interstellar, which he even played up to. McConaughey did in the fact of like time dilation, and he's got some experience with it. And I was very impressed with some of the cinematic stuff. I don't quite remember the alpha stuff at the end of it, but yeah, agreed. If you're going to make a game which is sort of doing a lot with some really cool concepts, maybe just wait a little longer until you've got some more polished graphics to show. You obviously don't want to like put people off before they've even had a chance to consider what you're pumping out. But next up, we did have what I would probably say was my most wasn't the most unexpected, but it was surprising due to the time frame, which was the free DLC which is coming for God of War Ragnarok, which is going to be out tomorrow as day of recording. We're recording this on the 11th, so this is coming out tomorrow, the 12th. And this is a roguelite style sort of you're playing as Kratos with Mimir, I can never remember his name, the disembodied head that you wear on your leg. If people remember God of War, the first one, you all no doubt remember that you could run through that section of the game where you would have different areas and zones and have to fight enemies and get through different traps. I'm imagining it's going to be sort of quite similar to that. It looks like it will be similar to that, but still very cool. I love that this was not leaked. We didn't even guess this was going to be a thing, and the fact that it's dropping so soon is fantastic.
We did have that conversation at the end of last week's episode where I asked you whether or not you were hot and cold on certain rumors, and one of those rumors was God of War DLC or expansion.
So I'm saying like a free DLC coming this soon. Like I think we all knew a DLC was coming, and we were sort of teasing about what it could even be about because we were saying there were some things in the game which would like led us to think certain things. But I was not expecting this DLC at this point in time. So
I guess no, cool. I wasn't either. But that is why I'm totally whelmed by this.
You to be fair, you said you would not be surprised. I think I remember you saying
I don't. But it's not even that a question of surprise. It's a question of what it is. The fact that it is a piece of like free DLC. Lots of people hear free DLC and they say amazing, something I can play.
I did
a gift for the fans. I hear free DLC and I go, oh, so wasn't something they felt like they could get away with charging money for then.
Oh, I see what you've meant. That's so funny because I'm definitely the first camp. I'm like, oh, that's so amazing. It's free. How nice. Just before Christmas, I get to play some God of War Ragnarok Valhalla.
Video game publishers aren't nice. If they make something that's worth money, they will get money for it.
How dare you? Hello Games, Sean
and
Murray is very, very nice. So I'm gonna put
that is true. There are some very nice, usually independent studios and publishers out there. I don't know if I'd include PlayStation amongst them. Ask people who have bought either one of the Last of Us games 5 times at full price at this point how much PlayStation love money, and they will remind you that it's usually a lot. I don't think they've changed their tune for the sake of God of War fans. When they said that this was free, when they said that this was dropping in, like, I think it was 5 days at the time of announcement, and when they said that it starred exclusively Kratos and Mimir, and when they said it was primarily a roguelike game, I was like, okay, yeah, great. Cool. It's a free update that they've called DLC, was what my brain told me.
My only thing was, and I already mentioned, it looked and it sounds very similar to that game mode that we had in God of War. But I enjoyed that. I thought that was fun. The fact that this was a DLC made me wonder if that was supposed to be included with the main game when it was released. But no, I'm super happy for this, and when it's come out, I think sounds fantastic. So,
and it will be fun because God of War Ragnarok is a phenomenal game,
yes,
with phenomenal combat, and there are a few games that that would be better suited to a kind of a roguelike conversion based off the combat's qualities alone. So I'm there for it. I've reinstalled the game. It's sitting on my PS5 right now. I'm ready, but I'm also like I wanted something bigger. I wanted this to be the God of War expansion. I wanted this to be paid DLC. I wanted to... This is going to sound crazy to some people, but I was ready to spend 20, 30, 40 pounds on something, not get given something for free.
Potential, do you think that this is a little palate cleanser to almost get you back into the the God of War Ragnarok headspace in order for a paid DLC dropping next year?
Maybe. It's so hard to tell because... A lot of the times nowadays, when something is being remastered or remade, when something is getting DLC, when something is getting an expansion, you can look at where the developer is at, and you kind of can point towards why they're doing something like that. Whether it's to increase their degree of familiarity with a piece of hardware or a piece of tech, especially early on in a certain generation's life cycle. It might be to plug a gap when you look at that and say, oh, well, they're working on a new IP and the next title might be 5 years away and they need something in the interim. But when you have something like this, something that, again, is free DLC, so there's no money being made on it, something that isn't really going to inspire many people to go out and buy God of War Ragnarok if they haven't already, in my opinion. It's not coinciding with a re-release of the game or God of War Ragnarok Ultimate Edition. It is just free DLC. It's really hard to point at why something like this existed. And some people will take the charitable opinion in this sort of situation.
They're just kindly game devs.
They're just, as Jeff kept saying, it's just one for the fans. PlayStation wanted to do something for the fans, but like, I call me a cynic. I just have a tough time believing that. But by the same token, I don't really have a much better suggestion as to why this is happening.
You have been called a cynic in the chat by Rodrigo. I'm just going to put that out there.
Yeah, but then, like, again, please, anyone who thinks that I'm being cynical right now around what PlayStation are angling for with something like this, take yourself back to any of the conversations that Jonesy and I have had, or Jonesy, Chris and I have had over the years about any of the Last of Us situations. Every time we do that, you and I try and take the most charitable approach we can to understanding why those games come to exist and why they're priced the way they're priced. And we get told by people in the chat that we're shills and we're sellouts and stuff like that.
Now, no, we've never been called either of those things.
Well, you're right. We have a very nice audience, and they don't actually call us those.
Maybe we have in YouTube comment section.
Now I'm being cynical, and for the first time ever, I'm wrong because in fact, this multi-billion-dollar corporation is our friend, and they do just want to do something nice for the fans.
I'm glad we agree. I'm glad we got to that point. Thanks, Jamie. Sorry, I cut you off at the perfect time there, didn't I?
No. It's a combination of all. It's a combination.
I think
of a lot of things.
you are. What's funny is I actually, it's like we're just saying about Hello Games. I actually when you say it, I'm like, oh damn, you're totally right. There's no way that PlayStation do anything just to be nice, especially not PlayStation. But when it comes to like indies, I'm like, I think they do, because they have a much even like fake indies like CD Projekt Red. I think there's much more of an idea of good feeling and trying to foster a good relationship, goodwill. Whereas I think when it comes to like PlayStation, it's just cold hard cash, and so you're like, yeah.
Again, everything about the way PlayStation had handled so many of their other re-releases and remakes and reimaginings and remasters and so on and so forth in recent memory had been, in some cases, like anti-consumer, according to certain people, depending on how hard they are on it. I don't want to readily accept the opposite being true just because it's nice to think that someone else has been nice once. I do think there's potentially a very innocent explanation around here. Like, now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, following on from your earlier question, maybe there is a situation where most of Sony Santa Monica is moving on to something else, but there was a pocket of people, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people who couldn't move on immediately for one reason or another. And so they were pottering around, and someone went to a meeting room one day and said, hey, someone was experimenting with this roguelike mode for God of War. Do you reckon we could try and flesh it out for a bit for the next 2 weeks and see what it looks like? And someone said, yeah, you guys go off and do this for a couple of weeks and see what you come up with. And it was good enough that they thought, hang on, if we polish this up a bit, it could be released. Also, the other thing is I'm talking from a position of complete unawareness and obliviousness to how much work has gone into this. We might start playing this thing and find that it's 6 hours long. It has tons of new dialogue written and recorded by the whole narrative team and all the voice actors. It has tons of new art and so on and so forth. So I don't want to undermine like the work that's gone into it or suggest that it's not going to be good or anything like that. I'm just saying, when I hear free DLC, when it comes to a title like this and a studio like this was something they felt that they couldn't get people to pay for.
Here's a great little plug right now, everyone watching in the live or in catch up. If you want to know what Jamie and I thought of God of War Ragnarok Valhalla, come in next week. Stay tuned. We'll be giving our opinions because I guarantee that we'll both be playing it in the next few days, so we can give 100%. You our opinions on it. Next up, we had something which I know that me and the fam were very excited about. This is Big Walk was announced. It's coming in 2025. It's from the I'm going to call it what my kids call it, even though it's not. It's House, the makers of Goose Goose. It's the Untitled Goose Game from House. Making a new game, which kind of had a strange. I almost felt it was like a bit of a Pikmin type aesthetic. With just the fact the little weird characters and the way that they were designed gave me that vibe.
Yeah.
But a little cutesy art style game from House sounds fantastic. Like those guys know how to make a fun ass game. So I'm excited about what they're going to be bringing out with that.
Certainly, sure.
We then had an official reveal trailer for Lego Fortnite, which we've already touched on. The new survival game mode from Epic for Fortnite. Not a lot else to say about that. The trailer, I think, showcases quite nicely what you can do in that game, how that works, how it functions. So it was pretty cool. We then got a live performance for one of the songs from Senua's Saga, Hellblade 2. A cool little aside, nice little gathering on stage to get some of that.
Yeah.
They also had I can't remember her name. The voice actress who plays Senua was up on stage after.
I always forget her name as well. But
I've got it right here. Have I? No, I haven't. I thought you'd written it, but you.
No, it's not there. I forget her name. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Nice lady.
I was apologising to her, not you.
Oh, you're saying I'm sorry, nice lady. Yeah.
I'm saying I'm sorry, nice lady. I've forgotten to put your name in the document. You're very good at acting.
She is very good at acting. We then had, oh blimey, I'm going to annihilate this. We had Ikumi Nakamura.
Wait, did you have any thoughts on Hellblade 2?
Nothing new. Like, it looks phenomenal. I just want to play that game, and it feels like we've been looking at it and saying it looks phenomenal for years and years and years, and but it's one of those things where it could be one of the most amazing games you've ever played, or it could be a kind of okay. And I really don't know where I fall on that. Like it's
Really hedging your bets on that one. So it could be good, but it could also, bear
no,
with me here, be bad.
no, not good. Like it could be, because the way that they played around with stuff in Hellblade was almost like Alan Wake-esque, right? The way that they sort of did weird stuff, messed with your brain,
Sure.
and the fact that that they could go further down that route. The way that they did it with Alan Wake and Alan Wake 2, and now they've made an absolutely phenomenal game which has blown people away and won awards. I feel like Hellblade 2 could do exactly the same thing, but it seems like we keep seeing amazing stuff for that game, and we've talked about it before and said I don't know how much of it is going to be. If I'm being totally honest, that game blows me away in all the trailers except for the combat stuff. It just leaves me a bit flat, if I'm being honest.
I mean, the combat was some of one of the more rote elements of the original game as well.
It was, and so I don't want to be unnecessarily mean on it when I think it could be absolutely phenomenal from a narrative, storytelling, cinematic side. Like the way that they're going to weave together gameplay and cinematics, I think could be really interesting. But so I don't really know where I'm at with that.
Okay.
Like
I think it looks great. I did want to say that much.
It does look great.
It looks really nice.
It looks phenomenal. What did you have any thoughts from that trailer? Like pushing?
No, I kind of feel the same. I kind of feel the same way as you. That we've seen that game a lot now. We needed to see more of it. And while they did pull back the curtain a little bit more on the game's combat specifically, and that was nice to see. It still doesn't feel like a game that you have a true grasp of yet in terms of what the controller in hand experience might be. That's kind of like the last piece of the puzzle. So. But
that's what I'm trying to say as well.
Yeah, but then that sometimes that happens, doesn't it? Like you can see a game so many times, but you still have that feeling of I have no idea what it's going to be like when I'm playing that. And Hellblade does have a bit of that going on.
Did you have the same thing as me in that trailer though? In that I felt uncomfortable with how good the graphics were, like the facial animation, the facial graphics. I was like, is that live action? And then I was like, no, hold on, is that no, it's that? And I was like, I'm getting uncomfortable.
I did have that at one point in the show, but it wasn't with Hellblade.
Okay, interesting. I mean, I think I know what you're going to say. That was about OD.
Yeah.
Yeah, would you? Yeah, Jesus, that was. I was like, is this film? Is this?
I kept looking at the teeth and being like, teeth we can't do that yet.
We can't do teeth. No, I definitely had it with Hellblade. Like it was, I just thought it looked absolutely stunning, and it reminded me of not live action, I suppose, but it reminded me of. I'm just going to put a date on it. Say like film CG 10 years ago, like. Really good facial animation from films 10 years ago, and I'm thinking like, wow, that looks absolutely phenomenal. Like I can't wait to get my hands on this game and actually see what it is. But hey, hopefully, I don't even know when. 2025? 2024, sorry. The release window is 2024. But yeah, no, nothing specific, so we don't know when it's actually going to come out yet. But it will be Xbox, PC, and Game Pass, which is pretty sick because we got to play it day one.
Yeah.
So yeah, then we had Ikumi Nakamura, who came out to announce a new game called Kamuri. I don't remember Kamuri. I don't remember what that was.
Kamuri was the CG trailer that like kind of set in a sort of slightly cyberpunky Asian-inspired setting. Lots of people kind of free running around, and then they get to the end of the trailer. And they almost make like a box shape with their fingers, and the camera goes through it, and there are all these monsters and ghostly figures, very reminiscent of some of the work that Nakamura probably did herself on Ghostwire Tokyo, like a weird, like flying tiger-headed dragon, monstery devil thing. Really cool style. This was the thing that remember Jeff Keighley said this game hasn't been signed to a publisher, and no one's even picked this up yet. But he said, "Come to the Game Awards, and let the fans be the first people."
This was the weird girl.
This is the internet's favorite developer who who went viral after appearing on a Bethesda showcase a few years ago. Left Tango and made her own studio because of, I guess, how famous she became.
Yes, no, yeah, she was great. She was fantastic. I like it when people are just themselves, no matter the situation, and it felt like that, which was quite cool. But yeah, no, actually, sorry, no, I do. Now you said it, I do remember it. Whatever she's doing, that absolutely looked phenomenal. Again, I was like, I'm not really sure what it's going to end up being, but it looks wicked. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
We then had a trailer for No Rest for the Wicked, which is from Moon Studios, the makers of Ori and the Blind Forest, Ori and the Will of the Wisp, I'm guessing as well.
I just wanted to quickly. I know I feel like I'm interrupting you at every interval here.
No, please do. Please do. Otherwise, I'll skate over.
Say that No Rest for the Wicked, I think I said to you and Chris the next day, like, might have been one of my games of the show in terms of just something that, like, leapt out of the gates. The more I reflect on Blind Forest and Will of the Wisps, the more I think that the two Ori games might be some of my favourite kind of Metroidvanias of the last decade plus at this point. I have really, really fond memories of them both, and I think I'm going to go back and play them both again. And so for Moon Studios to be coming out with something completely different, I just thought this was one of the one of the more striking art styles we saw in the whole night. This was a really impressive looking game, and it just stuck with me. Something about it really stuck with me.
I think when you sort of say is because I watched the trailer for that and I was kind of like, yeah, okay, I don't really know what this is. I don't really know if I'm interested in it. And then when they said it was from Moon Studios, I was like, okay, yeah. I played like half of Ori and the Will of the Wisp and thought like these are dudes who know how to make a game. And there's a strange thing that when you sort of put those two things together, you're suddenly like, yeah, this is going to be cool. Because some studios put out games, very, very good looking trailers, but because they don't necessarily have you don't know anything about their ability to make games, you're sort of questioning that aspect of it. But I think this is something you don't need to question.
It goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning when we were talking about Windblown, from the Dead Cells team.
Yeah.
Like, it's a combination of what a game looks like and the pedigree of the people that are making it. And sometimes, you have to be a little bit careful putting 2 and 2 together to make sure you're still getting 4. But they both feel like safe enough bets for me that I was sufficiently impressed with both.
I like, so we have a look behind the curtain. So we have a doc that often Jamie puts together because he is the man, and I love him for it. And I don't remember this at all. Jamie's just written, "Gonzo is here. Apparently a big Zelda fan. What a guy!" I'm like, I don't remember that at all. So
Gonzo, the Muppet.
Is that the Muppet? I don't know Muppets.
Muppet.
I don't know Muppets at all.
I don't know. The only way I know Muppets at the moment is that I'm at this point. I'm aware that Jeff Keighley is a very big Muppets fan and does whatever he can to work the Muppets. The Muppets have been featured in like every Game Awards for like the last 4 years.
I block it out. I don't like puppets and crap like that. It's like, I don't want it. Just keep it away from me. When this happened, I was like, I don't get it. I don't get this bit. What are you doing? Why are you chasing around a furry dude? Like, let's crack on, Jeff.
That is a fair point. But now I'm wondering, before I pointed out that Gonzo was a Muppet and you read the line, "Gonzo is here," who did you think Gonzo was?
I was trying to rack in my brains, like, who's Gonzo apart from a big Zelda fan? I was like, who is this dude? Now you said, I'm like,
he was like an indie developer.
Yeah.
Like,
Gonzo.
Gonzo.
Gonzo, who the hell is Gonzo? I'm like trying to rack my brains. No, Gonzo, the Muppet. Yes, of course. No, that whole bit, because then you have to do the green screen because someone's got their hand up its arse. So you've got to make it look like you're in the studio, but you're not. So he left the stage to do this bit with a puppet off stage to come back. I was like, why have you done this? Because it wasn't even about anything. It wasn't about a game. It wasn't about anything. Anyway.
It's called comedy, Jonesy. I don't expect you to get it.
Oh, yeah, no, see, in the chat, I'm like this. Classy Cat's saying the same. He keeps forgetting that Muppets keep popping up at the awards show. I don't remember Muppets ever being there before.
The Muppets are always at the Game Awards. I think, was it Animal last year who was going crazy? Or Cookie Monster or something like that?
I know Cookie Monster. That's the blue guy, right, who eats cookies, obviously.
Yeah.
And I know the Big Bird. No, is that from Sesame Street? Is that different?
The Big Bird is Sesame Street. Is Cookie Monster Sesame Street then? Have I also got my wires?
Are they the same thing? And the Muppets from Sesame Street?
Muppets are Kermit and Miss Piggy. Animal, who's the crazy, wild, like redheaded guy. Fozzie Bear, Beaker.
Oh God! Okay, no, you're so far outside of mine.
Statler and Waldorf.
What?
Grover. Crazy. Oscar the Grouch, the guy who lives in the bin. Elmo.
I thought that was Animal. The podcast has become like a...
No, wait. When Google has now blended Muppets and Sesame Street together, so disregard everything I've just said, because Google's now trying to tell me that Elmo is a...
Are they from Elmo the same thing? Oh yeah, but are they this? Are they? Do the Muppets feature on Sesame Street? Is that what happens?
Is that what we've stumbled across here? That the Sesame Street features Muppets or something? Sesame
yeah,
Street,
both.
The characters of Sesame Street are Muppets.
Yeah, chat is saying both are Sesame Street.
Oh my
I
god,
didn't
this
watch
is well
Sesame. I'm
confusing.
sorry. I didn't watch any fans of Sesame Street. I didn't watch Sesame Street. I don't. Yeah, I don't like Muppets. I've never watched
Oh,
that
wait,
Muppet
does that
Christmas
mean that
Treasure Island or whatever it's called.
does that mean that Big Bird is in like Muppets Christmas Carol?
I've never seen that. I don't know. I know the frog. I know Kermit and Miss Piggy, and I know the bird, the big bird, and the Cookie Monster. I think that's about it. Anyway, oh my god, I'm so sorry that I don't know how I've
One of
done
these
this
guys
to
looks a
us.
bit like you,
Really? What's it called?
Sam Eagle.
Sam Eagle. A Muppet
Yeah,
called Sam Eagle. I'm going to look it up.
yeah, or Sam the Eagle.
Sam the Eagle. Right, everyone, go about your business. Just wait for me to look up a Muppet.
You look like a mixture between Sam Eagle and Beaker.
How? How's I've got two eyebrows for one, and don't have a beak.
Barely.
I mean, this is just
I,
getting
I,
mean. Hold on, let's
type in
just roll back to the beginning of the entire conversation where Jamie wasn't enjoying Chris Judge having a go at devs and taking the mick, and now apparently I look like a Muppet bird with one eyebrow.
Hang on. So, apparently, I don't even know what to say.
I didn't
I'm just saying
realise
you look
I'd
like a Muppet.
I didn't realise I'd burnt you so much by saying that you sounded like a dog that you've
Come
saved
back to me.
up.
Come back to me when you get a job at Infinity Ward, and maybe I'll retract my statement. But until then, I
I
feel
look like
no
a Muppet.
shame.
Wow. To say what you really feel. Let's move on. So
I thought you look like Rizzo the Rat. If anything, I've done you a favour.
I'm not going to look up Rizzo the Rat. Sega. They announced some remakes. No, they didn't. Yes, they did. I'm getting ahead of myself.
There's a fine line, I guess, between like remakes and reimaginings and reboots when it comes to these those titles, isn't there?
There is. And so we had, they announced anyway, Jet Set Radio, Crazy Taxi, Golden Axe, Streets of Rage, and Shinobi, but there were more in development of which they didn't actually give us the names for. So of that, I'm most excited about Golden Axe. Hit me. What grabs your attention?
I thought Golden Axe looked the worst of the clips they showed from games, though.
Fair,
That's the
fair.
problem. I'll go Jet Set Radio.
Crazy Taxi, I thought looked all right. Looked all right. I thought that looked okay.
Crazy Taxi is more of a design problem. I don't know if I want to play a Crazy Taxi game in 2024
That's a
and
good
beyond.
point. That's a very good point.
And Streets of Rage and Shinobi, like the art style they went for Shinobi looked cool. Streets of Rage and Golden Axe, they could easily be very fun, but it's all in the execution.
Agreed.
Still, like it was cool because there have been so many rumors about Sega doing something like this for a long time. It was nice that they just came out and were like, "Yeah, we're not going to talk about specifics, but all your beloved franchises are still around, and they're all having something done to them, and they will all appear over the next handful of years." There had been talk about them trying to kind of return to some of the more rebellious energy they felt like they had during the Dreamcast era, which didn't serve them particularly well at the time. For anyone that remembers the Dreamcast's fortunes and fate, but it's nice to see them kind of, I don't know, spread their wings a little bit and be more than just the Sonic people.
Yes, and they have such big franchises. It does make sense that they're going to do this at this point. Like remakes and whatever have done so well. Reimaginings have done so well in the past couple of years. Next up, we had Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, which is coming to Xbox, PlayStation 5, and PC. I find it hard to get excited about Dragon Ball games because any Dragon Ball game I've played have not been great. Is that
I'm right there with
unfair?
you. This is where we need Chris here to be excited about Dragon Ball for us, because I feel the same way. I haven't played a good Dragon Ball game, and I know people like those old fighting games on PS2. I would try and say the name of them, but I probably would butcher the pronunciation. Something that sounds vaguely similar to Budokai or something like that. But yeah, not for me.
We had a trailer for the casting of Frank Stone, which is this is quoted, cinematic horror experience, which is going to be set in the Dead by Daylight universe, and it's developed by Supermassive Games. This looked quite cool. Like, I like the sound of that. Dead by Daylight, not really anything that I've got my teeth into too much, but yeah, something a little bit different from them. I think should be a nice little aside. Sounds pretty cool.
Yeah. I think if I were going to enjoy something from within the Dead by Daylight universe, it would be a single player experience. And I think if you're going to do a single player horror experience, getting Supermassive involved, is a pretty safe bet as well. So we'll see how it turns out.
I cannot remember for the life of me how long they said it's been since we've played a Mana game, but we had Visions of Mana announced for Xbox, PlayStation 5, Switch, and PS and PC. This JRPG's got real-time combat, which is, of course, not that common with JRPG games. One of the reasons I struggle to play them. Have you ever played a Mana game? I've not played one. I don't know how many.
I was vaguely familiar with like the weird history of Mana and how there was one that never actually came out in the West, and I know that Square Enix got around to addressing all of that over the past couple of years, and maybe subtly, like behind the scenes, they were doing that to gauge the temperature for the future of the series, and clearly things were hot enough. I thought it looked very pretty.
Yeah.
But then a lot of JRPGs of this nature do, and I still don't play them. Like any of the Tales games or Dragon Quest games, like, those art styles can sometimes be very nicely presented. Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
This is the point at which I started to get too tired and started to struggle a little bit, because when we had the trailer for Rise of the Ronin, I thought that it was a trailer for Ghost of Tsushima 2. And I was kind of like, is this Ghost of Tsushima 2? And I was like, no, it doesn't look... It might be. And I was like, no, the combat looks totally wrong. And this is not the same art style. And I was like, this is...
Yeah.
Why have they... But I was struggling, from lack of sleep. But no, Rise of the Ronin does look cool. Looks very fun. Coming from Sony Studios, developed by Team Ninja, and is coming in March of 2024, which is, of course, not that long, which is like just over 3 months from this point out. Sorry, all 4 months, actually. When it's actually released 22nd. But yeah, no, Rise of the Ronin does look pretty cool. Do you reckon that's going to do anything for you?
Potentially. I feel like I'm someone who hasn't really been able to get too sucked into a Team Ninja game for a little while now. This is one of the things they've made that has looked a little bit more up my street. Hopefully because they're getting away a little bit from the more sort of like Soulsborne inspired combat that has been in some of their more recent efforts. There is still an element of it where, like, kind of tapping into what you thought at the time, where it kind of looks like a B grade Ghost of Tsushima sometimes.
I didn't want to call it like a downgrade or whatever, but yeah,
clearly some of the sort of like more open ended or exploration focused elements of the game, like, don't always look quite as smooth or sophisticated as some of what games like Tsushima have going for them, but it could still be very fun to play. At times, there was almost an Onimusha vibe here. I still think that it's a cool setting, and that there's a lot that can be done within the realms of a Ronin focused experience. So I'll keep an eye on it. But it feels too early to say like whether or not I'm truly going to get behind it in the way that I hoped I would when I remember the debut trailer came in that PlayStation stream. Probably over a year ago now. I remember the debut trailer looking really cool. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Like I said, I didn't play Wolong because it was too soulsy. I didn't play Neo because it was too soulsy. So I just hope that this isn't too soulsy. Basically.
Fair. Something which definitely isn't going to be too soulsy. We then had Hideo Kojima reveal his Xbox game trailer for OD, or Overdose that we've called it before. It was a bit of a strange one. It wasn't much of a game trailer, but it has also been called a sort of cross-genre movie game. I don't even know what we could say, like crossover, mashup. It was who was it? We had Jordan Peele came out. Because obviously who's being part of this, obviously as a horror director, he's very much got his feet in this area. So unsurprising that maybe Hideo Kojima's working with him. He's worked obviously with Guillermo del Toro before, so it makes sense for him to sort of get other people on board that know this area well. The trailer was very strange. So we had some disembodied heads. As you said before, we had some very realistic looking, almost lifelike graphics of... I'm trying to think of... I can't remember the actors that we actually saw. I think I only recognise like one of them.
It's like... the girl, she's called like Sophia Lillis or something like that. And she's in the It films.
Right.
Then it was Hunter Schafer, who
Yes.
I believe is in... what's the teen drug sex thing? Euphoria.
Right.
And then Udo Kier. The
Look at
crazy
them.
old German-looking guy.
Memory on you. Who I'm pretty sure isn't he in Human Centipede?
Is it? I don't know. I think he just does. He just look like the Human Centipede guy, or is
Maybe
he
he
the?
does. I thought he was
I
the
think.
Human
I think.
Centipede guy.
I think he might just look like the
Oh,
Human
okay.
Centipede guy. I'm
Fair
just gonna.
enough.
I don't know about that for sure. Um, his the films that come up when you type in his name on Google are Swan Song, Blood for Dracula, Bacurau, Iron Sky, Downsizing, Flesh for Frankenstein.
Oh, so
What
no
does
Human
Wikipedia
Centipede.
say? He's a character actor who's appeared in more than 220 films, collaborated with acclaimed filmmakers such as Lars von Trier, Gus Van Sant, Werner Herzog. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't think he's the Human Centipede guy, though.
Oh, I must be getting confused with the other one. They all look alike. These old Germans. But then, yeah. So we did. So we did have a little bit. Jeff probed at length Kojima about what this actually is, and the interpreter did. Do you know what's funny? I swear the interpreter, word for word, interpreted what Kojima said, but Kojima didn't say that much that clearly. So it ended up being a bit of a drawn out. Like exchange where we didn't get much. We learned that it was using cloud gaming tech on the Xbox, obviously, which is fine, which is cool. Like I said, Jordan Peele then came out as like another little sneaky, oh, and someone else is at the door, because Hideo came out of a door in the middle of the set. But yeah, no, it's interesting at this point, and I guess we'll wait and see what happens and where this goes and what it turns into.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree, and I think that interesting is the right word for it at this stage. Like, if you want to kind of take the raw kind of the baseline components of what's going on here, Hideo Kojima making something that is apparently still a game at the end of the day, albeit a game with other elements and sort of some kind of cross media sort of ambitions, but we'll see. Jordan Peele's involvement, the fact that it's a horror game, the cast, like there are things that you can cling on to and say, okay, that's cool. But in terms of as far as we were talking about Hellblade 2 and not being able to visualize what you're doing or how it's going to play or what the controller in hand experience will be like. We're a million miles away from that with OD. And as far as the teaser content from the game side itself goes, whilst those heads were very well rendered, and could almost fool me into thinking they were live action up until Udo Kier. I think he was the one that gave it away for me. What they were saying and the way they were saying it didn't tell you anything. The weird kind of shot of one of the actresses like screaming at the end, very odd. The promise of Hideo Kojima working with other directors as well in the process, and like bringing together kind of like the Avengers or whatever they were calling it, of creatives or film creatives. I couldn't really tell what that was meant to be implying. It's all stuff that kind of sounds very Kojima, but at the end of the day, that I want to play his video games, and
Yeah.
I even I myself as a fan have to be cautious about getting too caught up in being excited for the sake of being excited, and I have to acknowledge when he hasn't given us enough, and like OD, there's just not enough there yet. It's not a thing, and I refuse to be drawn in by the presence of big names because, it just might not mean anything. And for as much as I like to believe that Jordan Peele might be a big gamer, and I'm sure he did play Metal Gear Solid 2, and I'm sure he did think it was genius, but like, who knows what? Every single person that has ever described the person of working with Hideo Kojima, especially prior to the release of the projects that they were working with him on, has always used the same words to describe him. He's an auteur, he's a genius, where he presents these ideas in such a way that blows people's minds, and the games come out and you go, okay, it's a video game. Like Death Stranding,
Yeah.
for all that bullshit, it's a video game. This is a game. You like it or you don't like it, and then eventually you do. Like, different people sit in different camps, but eventually it was just a black and white fucking video game. This sounds like it's going to be less of one of those, but it will still be something, and I need to see what that something is before I can really get real with it. And which it means at the moment, Death Stranding 2, which he's been radio silent on now for a year, is still a far more intriguing and exciting prospect, because that's a fucking video game.
Yes. No, agreed, like 100%. Especially when the stuff coming out about OD it's it's not necessarily just a game. It's a movie game, Matt. And you're like, okay, we know he loves a cutscene. So what's this going to end up being at the end of the day?
It's a cross between a movie and a game. Doesn't, again, until we know what that means, it doesn't mean anything. Using cloud gaming tech, until we know what that means, it doesn't mean anything. Collaborating with a director, okay, until we know what that means, it doesn't mean anything. Hideo Kojima collaborated with Guillermo del Toro and Nicholas Winding Refn on Death Stranding as well. But you know what those collaborations ended up being? We're going to scan you, and we're not even going to let you do the voice. You're not even going to do the voice acting or the performance capture.
Right.
Other people more talented than you are, and I'm going to use your face and body because I want to tell everyone how famous my friends are. And that is the thing you have to be wary of with Hideo Kojima. He's very proud of how famous his friends are.
Right. Yes, he does love to slide in a famous face, doesn't he? There's something he enjoys doing.
And when you get someone on stage like Jeff, who is very proud of the fact that he is friends with Hideo Kojima, you get this vicious cycle, this never-ending like circle jerk of people who are really excited.
I literally
to be on stage
thought
with the people there, so, like and you get a stage like this where like one of the longest segments of an entire award show was devoted to a non-existent project from someone who has made one good game in the past 8 years. Yes. Which is, ironically, a divisive, like not a black and white good game either.
A divisively good game. And it was also the fact of before the show we said Hideo will definitely be there because Jeff will definitely want him there. I think we even questioned about whether or not Death Stranding 2 would be there. I think you said you didn't think OD would necessarily be there because we haven't seen enough of Death Stranding 2 yet. But I think we did say that Hideo will definitely be there because he's mates with Jeff.
That was my guess. If you remember at the end of the last podcast, that was my wild card, was that Kojima will be there but not for Death Stranding 2. So I called it.
You did. You did.
But I wish I hadn't. I wish I was wrong. But yeah, as you pointed out, like Jeff Keighley has brought Hideo Kojima out on a stage before to announce a podcast.
Yes, of course.
It's a big deal for him. He gets borderline emotional every time he introduces him. It's something we're gonna have to get used to. But this wasn't it. Sorry.
I'm just going to have to take a brief aside at this point in the show to say anyone who's watching video can agree with me, and agreement. I'll only be accepting agreement. The way that Jamie has pushed back his headphones on his head makes me think that he would look pretty sick with a top knot. So,
fuck off,
or a man bun. So let's just put that out there.
Well, it's never going to happen. You'll find no Shoreditch samurais over here.
Tom Cruise, eat your heart out. That's all I'm saying.
Me.
Talking movies, films, crossovers, mashups, and whatnot. Something that I was very excited about, and Chris was as well, because I said this in our WhatsApp chat after, and Jamie was very lukewarm on. There's a Jurassic Park survival game coming. It's going to be a first-person survival game, single player, set on Isla Nublar just after the events of the first film, and it's going to be on Xbox, PlayStation 5, and PC. I was very excited about it, and I get why you were like, this comes from like a studio that's not that exciting, and it's a game that's not that exciting, and I don't understand why you two are so excited. I feel like there has been a hole for a good Jurassic Park game, single player games, like official game on Isla Nublar for the last 30 years, and I feel like it's been done many times in many iterations in games. One that I had being played in my house only yesterday in the shape of the Lego Jurassic Park games. But I feel like we need a proper Jurassic Park game, and it sounds like this is going to be a relatively open world survival game where you're going to be fending off dinosaurs, solving puzzles, trying to survive, and I think that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, I remember when you sent that reply over WhatsApp to kind of like defend your position. I remember reading it and starting to construct a response in my head, and I wasn't going to shoot it down or poke, but I was going to be a bit like bar humbug about it all. And then I realized, like, what am I talking about? As we witnessed this year with Hogwarts Legacy, there is a massive audience for people who want to see their favorite worlds and their favorite franchises be brought to life in a medium that hasn't done them justice up to this point. And whilst there have been good Jurassic Park games, they've focused on other elements of the Jurassic Park formula, like Jurassic Park. Was it the Evolution games where there were like park
Oh
builders and
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like that? Like, they're fine, but they're not what people like you might remember from having like very fond memories going back 30 years of that first movie, for example. And the fact that this made a lot of direct references to that first movie and
So
it
many.
appeared that could be a real love letter for like, yeah, more power to them. I really hope it's good, and I really hope that long-time Jurassic Park fans get the game that they feel like they've always wanted. I hope it's not too scary. I heard some people coin the phrase "alien isolation," but with Jurassic Park.
I
And if
thought
it
Alien
is that,
Isolation as well. I must admit that's the first game that came to mind. Yeah.
but also if it is that, I won't be able to play it because I can never play Alien Isolation.
But I don't know. I feel like an Alien Isolation, though, because it's an alien game, is eminently more scary to me. Whereas I feel like Jurassic Park, at the end of the day, even if it's a scary Alien Isolation version of Jurassic Park, it's still Jurassic Park. So I don't think it can be that scary. If that.
Oh, I don't know, man. Being in that like kitchen with the Velociraptors, like
Whoa.
yeah, like running from a T-Rex is different from running from a Xenomorph, but like there are proper like crawl spacey moments in Jurassic
There
Park
are.
that could be very creepy.
Is it the Dilophosaurus which has the spitting one that does that and shake thing?
That gets the big guy.
The big
He
guy.
spits.
Oh
He
yes,
spits goo in the big guy's face when he's trying to get in the truck.
yeah. Oh, I can't remember that guy's name. No, yeah, absolutely, you're right. So that was obviously played a lot in this trailer. Was like it was chasing her, and she could constantly hear it, and she was trying to like lure it away and stuff. And that's then you had the whole bit where they go into the kitchen, and then the freezer door opens. We know there's a Velociraptor in the freezer from the film. So all of that stuff like was maybe a little bit too much from the film, and they even did the bit with the flare that Jeff Goldblum does, where she's got the flare with the T-Rex. I know why they did it, because they were trying to say, hey, look, this isn't just a Jurassic Park game. This is Jurassic Park, the game. And you're going to be playing a single player new story. But it was maybe too much, maybe too on the nose. But at the same time, man, they got me by the short ones. And I was like, now I want to play this. This looks so cool.
Like, imagine, and again, it's on the nose, but it could be very cool. Like, imagine if you do have to actually pay attention to sort of like vibrations in the water if there are puddles around to know if there's a T-Rex nearby.
There's a mission where you're carrying a cup of water, and like you're everywhere you walk in, and then you just start to see it go. That'd be pretty cool.
You have to choose between one of 3 toilet cubicles, and if you sit in the wrong one, you're going to get eaten while you're taking a dump.
Yeah, that would be quite funny. All right, we're on to another award again, as this was, of course, the award show. Doesn't sound like it, does it? We've not really covered many awards so far, mostly game reveals and trailers. But Hi-Fi Rush, very highly regarded, not in no small part by Jamie particularly, but also me, won the award for Best Audio Design, which totally makes sense. It was a very cool game, very well done with the audio, very nice mashup between those two styles. But again, I suppose this is the point, and maybe we should talk about, Jamie, because this is for audio design, some audio design built into the game show, because one thing that we haven't really discussed yet at length is the fact that the length of time that developer, and seriously anyway, we joked about it, but the length of time that developers actually got, or people receiving awards got, to talk about their awards or say thank you to people was pretty rough. The first, you may have noticed it, was by the music that started playing. I then think they had another track that started to play even louder if you didn't quickly wrap it up. And after the fact, we then got photos released on X that showed signs that on the teleprompter basically telling people, wrap it up. Let's talk about it. What are your thoughts?
I mean, my thoughts echo, I think, a lot of the communities that people weren't given long enough. These are big awards, and these will mean a lot to we might be talking about the highlight of some people's careers, an opportunity to go on stage to thank their teams and their family members and their friends, and be acknowledged for the hard work they've put into a title that, again, they might never be able to replicate that moment. And the fact that that was boiled down to, from what I understand, 30 seconds before the music started playing, feels like a criminally short amount of time when you consider just what labours of love these games are and how many people work on them. And there must have been some thought ahead of time with regards to the length of the show, maybe how many times certain people are going to go up, or like whether people are going to thank entire development teams or just the proponents of those teams that worked on the part of the game that's being acknowledged or awarded. I don't know what the maths or the science that went into it was. Keighley's claimed after the fact that it was like wasn't an automated thing, that it was something they could trigger kind of on demand, and he did, as the night went on, supposedly ask the amount of time to be extended further and further. But it was just a bit uncomfortable and borderline embarrassing at times, especially when industry veterans and industry legends are on stage. There were a number, but just like to pick a name at random, like Sam Lake is someone who has been working his ass off in this industry for so long, and has made so many games that have meant a lot to so many people. But for the first time, arguably in his whole career, apart from like to an extent Max Payne, but things were more complicated back then. First of all, with the lack of award shows, but then the presence of other people like Rockstar in the mix. This was basically a time where Sam Lake had made something that had become a critical darling, and he was in the kind of conversations that games like Quantum Break and Control hadn't quite reached those heights. And he was up there, and he was on stage like a games industry legend, an icon, was on stage for maybe the first and last time of his career, with an opportunity to speak from the heart. And the fact that like those moments were given 30 seconds to breathe, yeah, that feels. The word that I almost used there was criminal. That's maybe a bit strong, but yeah, that leaves a real sour taste in my mouth. Likewise, I think the tact of putting a message on screen that says "wrap it up" feels like really, it just feels a little bit crass. Again,
it does, doesn't it?
As soon as you saw
that phrasing,
on social
wrap
media,
it up.
everyone had the same reaction. They saw that picture and they went, "Eesh!" Like,
who signed that off?
Exactly. Like, did you really just tell the director of Tears of the Kingdom to wrap it up? 30 seconds, like what are we doing here? And then when you compare and contrast that with, as has been mentioned, the amount of time given to other segments, the amount of time devoted to that Matthew McConaughey got on stage, or that Anthony Mackie and Simu Liu and various other people got on stage, and how many other, even Gonzo, our old pal Gonzo.
Oh my god, I hadn't even thought about the Gonzo bit. If they'd have cut Gonzo, that deserve. We're gonna have to tweet this on Super Show after this. I'm gonna work out how many awards could have been given out if the Gonzo section was taken out. If that 30 seconds was how long they were given, because he was on screen for like 5 minutes. I swear to God, Gonzo was there for ages.
See, it might have just felt like 5 minutes. I'd be interested to know what the actual time is, but sure, like if that's 5 minutes, and that we can take that and say that means 5 awards get an extra minute of speech length, or better yet, 5 awards that were like run through and like basically scrolled through while Keighley was on the side stage, could actually be done on stage.
Well, not even. More. But sorry to interrupt. Not even when Keighley scrolled through them, because you had a few awards that we've already gone through were in the pre-game, so they didn't even make it into the Game Awards show. Didn't even have all of their own awards in the award show because they pushed them into the pre-game, so but they can include more stuff in the actual show.
Also, like the ones in the pre-show, like the Best Family Game and the Accessibility Award, those awards were accepted by people and they were given speeches. And yet later on, but like fucking hell, like I don't know what the esports community thinks about the Game Awards, but I can't imagine they take it very seriously, because it's a total afterthought.
Yes.
Now, before I toss the question over to you and get your take. One thing I will say, and I hinted at this earlier, is I think that Jeff Keighley is in a very difficult position when it comes to this, because we are all kidding ourselves at this point if we're trying to pretend that the Game Awards is exclusively an award show. Game Awards is something bigger. Yes, I know what it says on the tin, but it has over the years become this big, sprawling show that gets as many eyeballs as it does and is able to be as big a celebration of games as it is because of all the other accoutrement that bring people through the front door. And that is announcements, that is reveals, that is trailers. If it didn't have any of those, it would be like any other game show. A Game Awards, excuse me. You go to some of the people out there who have tweeted with extreme degrees of passion about how many awards were actually, given enough space to breathe, how many awards were presented on the main stage, how many people got to go up and collect them, how long those acceptance speeches were. You go through those people's Twitter accounts and find what their opinions were on the speech lengths at, the golden joysticks or the dice awards or the BAFTAs. They wouldn't have any. Do you know why? They didn't watch them. Do you know why they didn't watch them? Because they weren't 3 hour long Jeff Keighley shows filled with trailers that actually get people to watch the thing in the begin with. So there isn't a part of me that has to acknowledge that having the Game Awards as it is, having the opportunity to put Sam Lake or putting the Team Larian Studios on stage and taking a award out of Timothy Chalamet's hands and having hundreds of thousands, and over the course of the following days and weeks, millions upon millions of people watching that moment happen, totally relies upon everything else that came before it.
It absolutely does, and I'm with you. And I think what Keighley's done is made a show which people want to watch. So at no point am I suggesting that. I've seen, for example, suggestions that they make it into two shows. One is an award show, one is an announcements and a feature show.
We both know what happens to the viewership of those two shows.
Oh, that was going to be my point. Nobody watches the award show; everyone watches the announcement show, and I don't think that's a viable idea. I think what my point would be is that the waiting for announcements, celebrities chatting. And I think, for example, and I love Matthew McConaughey. I don't want to say anything bad about him, but that section that he had to introduce Exodus, and just him be on stage, that for me, you could have cut that entire section and given an extra 30 seconds to each of the people that actually accepted awards. And that's not me trying to be a dick. I don't think anyone would have said the show was worse because Exodus and Matthew McConaughey weren't there. And I'm not. If you'd have cut,
I agree.
If you'd have cut Anthony Mackie saying, "Hey you, what are you saying?" If you just cut some of that out, you would have had.
What if I were to say to you that Anthony Mackie was there because he was promoting the fact that Twisted Metal had been renewed for season 2, and that Peacock had paid $150,000 for that, and that $150,000 was what allowed the show to be 17 minutes longer, even if he took up 3 minutes of them.
Then give Anthony Mackie an extra 5 minutes of chat.
And what I mean is, this is the to and fro. People hate adverts. Without adverts, there is no show. People hate winners not being given enough time, but without the announcements that take up the time, there is no award show to begin. If that's genuinely is lose.
If genuinely there's a formula which says, with all of the announcements and the trailers, and because there was some obvious advert, if you watch the show from start to finish, there were trailers for games that we're looking forward to. There were announcements that were big deal announcements. Then there were obvious adverts which were things we knew about, not that bigger games, and then they had a couple of minutes of a trailer, and you think, oh, that was very adverty right in the middle. And it's literally Keighley even got to the point where he was like, we'll see you again in a second, and then you had 2 minutes of trailers. If there was a genuine formula which was this is what we have to do to make the show happen, then I'm do you know what? I'm not going to, I promise I won't criticize you at all next year if you just make the show 15 minutes longer and give the people who win awards an extra minute.
Then you find most people, the number 4 complaint on their list is that it's already too long.
Yeah, yes, it is very, very long.
They want all very, very long. They want more winners on stage. They want longer speeches, and they also want the whole thing to be shorter. We deal with this all the time as video editors, where we say hand in a cut, and they say, "I need more of this footage, more of that footage, more of this other bit of footage, and I need the whole thing to be 17 minutes shorter." And you go, think about what you just said.
And then we go away and we make it happen, and then we
do because we need to get paid.
And then they don't respect us because that's how they roll. Anyway, enough of that griping. I'm sure you're right. I think and just to be fair, Keighley has made massive summer shows, award shows. How can we really criticize him when he seems to be nailing it? It just felt unfair. That's what I think happened this year. It just felt a little mean. But then, to be fair, reason I think the whole point I think this happened was because last year you had Christopher Judge chatting for 9 minutes. So hey, it is what it is.
Yeah, there's a better balance to be struck, and every time Keighley does a show like this, he goes straight on Twitter and puts a poll out saying, "How would you grade this show? A, B, C, D, E, or whatever the options are." He takes on board criticism. He doesn't strike me as someone who is in it for the glitz and the glamour or the fame or the money. I don't think there's that much there to be won. He strikes me as someone who does this, yes, because there's a gap in the market and he can make doing this handful of shows a year a living, and I'm sure that's great. But I think he does also care about the medium and care about the industry and want to put together a show that represents the best interests of everyone involved. But the problem is, when you're dealing with people who don't even know what they want from the show, and I think there's a good portion of people who have been on social media campaigning or rallying against the show who don't really know what they want or don't have a solution to the problems they're raising, then again, I go back to what I said at the top of the show. It is kind of like lose-lose. It's rock and a hard place for a lot of the decisions Keighley has to make. There's a finite amount of time. There's a finite amount of money. You can't please all crowds.
What would you think to I think I'm trying to think who do it. I think it's the Golden Globes maybe who do it. And I don't think I've seen the Game Awards do this. What would you think to a press conference that happens immediately? So don't change anything, but then immediately afterwards there's a press conference where journos get to actually put questions to the award winners, and they can talk at length. And, because that way I think you'd also get some interesting fodder for the gaming magazine sites and things to, take some stuff away and be able to talk more about what those guys have actually said about.
I'd be massively in favour of that. But again, we have to be careful assuming that something can come from nothing when it comes to things like this. Again, that is more money that needs to be spent. And because because of the nature of these shows, every time you spend more money, it's like the government. It's like every time you're spending more money somewhere else, that money has to come from somewhere. And sometimes people want the money spent in one place and don't understand why the money has to come from somewhere else. Doing another conference like that might mean another half an hour of commercials during the show. What do you get next year? Love this new conference after the fact, but why does the show have half an hour? Did you know, fun fact, Game Awards to 2023, 17 minutes of commercials. Game Awards 2024, 43 minutes of commercials. Explain this at Jeff Keighley. It's like,
I could imagine. I'm trying to think of something that you could do effectively for base it in I'm talking like a back room where you get journalists who, as the award has come off, and you don't really, and it's effectively you only do it if you could almost do it for a very limited extra cost. I completely agree with you. If it turned out that it was going to be, it was going to add minutes of adverts, I would agree that that's not something they should do. And there you go. That's why I don't have my own awards show, and Jeff Keighley does. And Jamie might in the future.
No one, put it bluntly, no one else does. And you look at what's happening to the Game Awards year on year versus the Oscars and the Golden Globes year on year. Complete inverse of what is happening to traditional Game Awards, to traditional award shows. Every time the Oscars rolls around every year, it's the same old story. Less viewership than the year before. More issues being raised about whether it's hosts or whether it's diversity and stuff like that, and more people saying, "Oh my god, old award shows are so boring. They're so antiquated. They're so unnecessary." In the midst of all of that, during the most unpopular time in the history of award shows, as far as other industries go, Jeff Keighley has created and massively reworked the public opinion or the mainstream opinion on award shows and made something that it gets more and more popular year on year and gets more and more people looking at and thinking about games critically. It's not perfect. It will never be perfect. And I think there are valid criticisms to be made of this year and every year. But I also think we need to sometimes take a step back and some of the because I've seen tweets, I don't know if you've seen tweets, that have been calling this year's Game Awards an embarrassment or despicable or
no, I haven't at all actually.
It's I just think we need to be a little bit more cognizant of the bigger picture. That's all.
I didn't mention it earlier on, and I've just double checked her surname, so I'm going to give her a shout out now. As let's take this into a good point about the Game Awards. Sydney Goodman in the pre-show, absolutely love Sydney Goodman. I think she's fantastic. I think she gets better.
Professional.
Absolutely, and gets better every year. And I even love her little random jokes and little asides and little funny stories that she puts in that are kind of I think she does a fantastic job. I didn't mention her earlier, so I thought it would be I should mention it as well.
She delivers them in a very nice kind of dry way. The one about the Goodman family being big into esports, going back to the 1800s.
Yes, my dad was into it. My granddad was into it. But she plays a very good, very dry line between you don't know if she is a massive gamer or has never played a game in her life, but she's just very funny, very professional. It just works, and I think she's great. I'm really glad that she's come back multiple times. We did have a new trailer and a release date for Black Myth Wukong, which I've been looking forward to for a couple of years now, and did seem like vaporware, possibly at one point, but it's not, because it's coming into August 20th of 2024. We should be getting our hands on Black Myth Wukong. The least exciting trailer for that game I think I've seen so far, from a personal perspective, I will say. Like, I think up until now, it looks much more like a game now, which obviously makes a lot of sense. But I think for me, the idea of what it was gonna be in the past was more exciting, because seemed more open to possibility. Like that, if you know anything about Monkey and that whole story, they could do a hell of a lot with that, and it looks like it's going to end up being a lot more sort of Souls-like. And we talked about it before, and it was like, hey, this is what this game's going to be like, but there was still a bit of hope for me that it was going to do something a bit different. But hey, we'll see. It's not out yet. Wait for the trailers.
I do understand where you're coming from.
We had some news about Warframe, the game that keeps on giving. They've got a new, I think it's DLC's coming, called Whispers in the Walls on December 13th. So that comes out in 2 days' time. So for Warframe fans, you've probably been a Warframe fan for a long time. It's been out a while, so fair play. They do keep.
At least they're still eating,
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, what if you've got people that are playing your games and eating it up every time you drop something new? Like, yeah, go for it. They didn't get any awards, but they got a mention. Starfield had an accolades trailer. I think, Jamie, you're right here where you said it's basically just a reminder that Starfield exists, because otherwise it wouldn't have really got a look in at the Game Awards, which does suck.
I was grateful for the reminder, because I did sit there and go, oh yeah, Starfield, that game that came out.
It's okay. I will. So something interesting happened in a couple of days ago, which was, I think it was Jeff Keighley himself that tweeted out that the top 10 Google searches for games this year, and he actually, so number 1 was Hogwarts Legacy, and like number 5 was, I think number 5 was Starfield, and every other game in that list like didn't feature in any of the nominations for Game Awards, I believe. So I was kind of like, oh, that's interesting. It's interesting that the 2 most Googled games of the year didn't even get a look in at the award show, which is, take from that what you will.
Yeah, and well, yeah. I don't. You say take from that what you will. The more I think about it, the less I know what to take from it.
I think it's that thing about like the Game Awards serve a particular audience, maybe.
Yeah, and not just serve a particular audience, but I think key element are voted for by a particular audience. I think it's particularly notable, but not that surprising, that when Polygon, I think, do a top 50 games of the year, and Hogwarts Legacy is not featured in it. Like, these are the people that are voting for the Game Awards, So
yeah, I think that was an oversight to not have Hogwarts in there, like even as a nomination. I'm not saying it should have won necessarily, but I know we've talked before about saying, hey, but look, what does it push out? And I know don't think it's an easy answer.
But yeah,
yeah. There we go. We then had a trailer for Tales of Kenzera, which is a game coming out April 24, which is going to be an EA original, a single-player action-adventure game. People watching may remember this because this was the part with the guy who played... sorry, what is his name? His name is...
he was Bayek in Assassin's Creed Origins.
Yes, Abu Bakr Salim. And he was talking about a journey that he went on when he sort of lost his own dad. And so the game seems to mirror some of those themes quite strongly, which, the trailer looked great, looked very cool.
Yeah, really nice style to it.
Which is ironic because we've talked about the fact that they cut a lot of the people short who are winning awards. I think this was a really nice aside, and I thought it was nice to have like a personal like insight by a guy who's involved in the making of a game and how that mirrors that. But at the same time, I remember thinking, oh, that's interesting that he was given so much time to talk when a lot of these award winners weren't. But anyway, we don't want to rehash the same.
Yeah, no. You're absolutely right to point it out. Like it was poorly balanced throughout. And these are nice moments. Like this and Ikumi Nakamura struck me as nice moments where like people were going on stage to announce something. Sure, it was technically like a reveal, but there was like a kind of a story to the reason that person was on stage, or how they ended up on stage, or what that game meant to them, or what the project was like. That kind of felt that hit a lot closer to home and felt a lot more of a celebration of the games industry than, say, the Matthew McConaughey Exodus thing. For as much as he does have obviously close connections to Texas and to Austin. But you're absolutely right that there was still an imbalance timing wise that became more and more noticeable and more frustrating as segments like this rolled on.
We then had a trailer for Lost Records Bloom and Rage, which is a new game coming from the developers of Life is Strange. So I know Jamie will be all over that like a bad rash.
This looked cool, man.
It did look cool.
It had that kind of element of like people regathering as adults to discuss something they all experienced as kids.
Yeah.
That I think could be cool.
Yeah, no, fair. It did look good. And hey, it's what's funny is I hear a lot of people for certain areas of the internet you would not expect who have a lot of time for Life is Strange and think they're fantastic games. Yeah, very weird. Like you'd
wait, which areas of the internet?
More like often gamers who are you'll see on like more politically like right wing stuff. Who would often be like go get woke, go broke kind of ethos, and woke is ruining this and that. But then when they talk about Life is Strange, and they're like, man, those are damn good games. Like those are very well made, enjoyable games. Which is cool, but is an interesting like, oh, okay, yeah, fair.
Yeah. That's I didn't expect that, but fair enough.
They're
not wrong.
They're not wrong.
I
not
like
wrong
those
at all.
games a lot.
No, they are. They are good games. They're well made, and they are very well received. So there you go. Did you ever play the most recent one? Was it Colors?
Through Colors or something like that? Yeah, I did. I think I got it for Christmas. God, how far back was it? 2 or 3 years ago now, and played it as kind of like my just prior to going back to work game, and yeah, like really liked it. I liked a lot of the characters. Life is Strange always has a moment where it starts to get into some of the more mystical, magical elements that are present in any one of those games, and sometimes the way that which those powers are presented and what they allow a player to do can be a bit weird. But the one in True Colors was he was essentially an overwhelmingly powerful empath who could tell how people were really feeling and what they were thinking and stuff like that. And the way they utilize that is kind of like, hey, turns out knowing how people are really thinking or feeling is both a blessing and a curse. They played off that in some interesting ways. And they've always got mad twists towards the end that sometimes feel wildly out of character for what has followed or what has come before. But at the same time, that's kind of part of the charm for me at this point.
They always remind me of games like, and I've only ever played sort of like the first hour or something of a Life is Strange game, so I'm maybe completely off base. But they always make me think that they would be like playing a game like Fahrenheit or something like that.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of walking around environments and talking to people and making choices. And maybe not quite as action oriented as Fahrenheit, but there are still some moments of like tension. That's for sure.
Definitely series that I need to get on at some point. I'll block out some time and I'll go hard on Life is Strange.
I don't know I have no idea how you're going to come away from it thinking or feeling. Yeah, interesting. I would like to be there for that.
Maybe I'll live stream it. I'll do play all of them back to back and live stream the whole thing. We then had a trailer for the first Berserker Kazan trailer. I don't remember. I must admit, I don't remember this one. Cartoony one. Yeah. I remember. No, do I remember?
Jeff called it cartoony. It was the one that had a slightly weird introduction because I think it is associated with another franchise that is massive in some part of Asia. So he introduced it by saying like hundreds of millions of players, but it was like this Soulsborne inspired action game with a very sort of like dark animated style. It looked cool though, I thought, but one of those ones that does kind of blend into the scenery a little bit. We have a couple of those every year.
We then had another mashup. We had Final Fantasy is going to be getting the Apex Legends treatment with a CGI trailer, but not much more. So, hey, what can we guess from that? Final Fantasy characters killing people in Apex Legends sounds good. I'm guessing that's what it's going to be. But
Well, I have no idea, but
me either.
I'm curious to see as well.
We then had the award for the best independent game, and that was taken by Sea of Stars, while Cocoon won best debut indie game. Indie games always a fun category for us. We love indies. I think we often talk about the fact they're actually one of the most exciting areas of like video games and what people are doing and things. So yeah, no, it was really good to see some solid indie games represented. I know I haven't played Sea of Stars. I know you played Cocoon. I didn't play Cocoon either, to be fair. But no,
Cocoon's very good. Cocoon is a very good puzzle game.
I remember when you said about you played. You were like, "Have you seen Cocoon?" And I was like, "What the film from the 1980s?" Like, no, the indie game. I'm like, no, I haven't.
That would be one of the weirder tie-ins.
It would.
I was a little bit surprised by. Well, surprised and not. I felt like I don't know. I just bounced off Sea of Stars in a way that I think coloured my opinion on that category by the time the awards rolled around. And I thought that there was a lot of Dredge and Dave the Diver goodwill out on the internet that might carry one of those to across the line.
Yeah.
But it didn't. Dredge was actually eligible for debut as well, and it didn't get that either. So fair play to Cocoon. Clearly hit home with a lot of people. And shout out to Pizza Tower as well. I know that. Didn't
lot of
end up
love for
picking up
Pizza
either
Tower.
award, but
Yeah.
So yeah, it turns out Twitter loves Pizza Tower. I found out afterwards.
Yes, I did as well. They absolutely love Pizza Tower. You're gonna, well, I'm sure they Ubisoft hope people do, but Skull and Bones, I'm sure they want people to love because it's got a release date. It's coming February 16th, and the closed beta is coming in December. So you can get in there now and try and get your hands on the closed beta. Skull and Bones, a game that seems like it's been probably had a trailer or some sort of advertisement for the last God knows how long. So finally coming out. Yay.
Somehow, for as backwards as delaying a game over and over again seems like it would be as a means of publicizing that game's existence, we have now reached a bizarre point in the Ubisoft timeline where Skull and Bones is like more of a known quantity than the Avatar game that came out last
It's
week.
actually physically out and has been reviewed. Okay, for my sins, I looked at Skull and Bones and I thought Black Flag, and I thought like they'd make good pirate games. This could be really fun. And I was like, don't think it, because this is going to be, I don't know. It's such a mired development process. I feel like I should be properly scared off of this game, but it does look cool. But what can I say?
I know what you mean. Like, we should be able to, the writing should be on the wall when a game is delayed that many times, but we can hold out hope. Let's play that closed beta.
I'm up for that. Let's register.
Let's play it.
Let's get on
Let's
there.
register and see what happens.
Maybe I'm a bit harsh on the next one. I'll let you talk about it because you were more excited about this than me.
You and Chris were both harsh about this, and I think you're gonna both have to eat your words.
Because we're getting a Blade game, like Blade as in Marvel Blade, as in the comic book character that everyone wants a game made out of. It's going to be coming to Xbox. Arcane Leon are working on this. And it should be insanely exciting. It's going to be a third-person action-adventure game. That is everything you want to hear from a Blade game. It's great, Jamie. Go on. Thoughts?
You're being so polite. You're doing to me for Blade what I did for you in Jurassic Park. It's just like, I'm just going to step out of the way. I just think that Blade is one of the coolest, like, untapped resources of comic book world material that is still out there at the moment. Like, for as much as they are not great in the grand scheme of things, I love the old school Wesley Snipes films. Maybe not Trinity, but certainly like Blade and Blade 2, I think are like a solid movies. I love a lot of what that character stands for. As soon as the Mahershala Ali kind of rebooted Blade as a part of the MCU was announced, immediately became my most anticipated MCU film, bar none. I just think he's an awesome character. There were rumors coming into the show that Arcane were going to be showing something. I think a couple of Arcane employees were kind of fiddling around on Twitter in a way that was kind of gesturing towards something happening. And then I remember seeing a leak or a leaker come out prior to the show starting, talking about Dishonored 3 being shown. And so basically I was sat there thinking, okay, we might get a Dishonored game. It's kind of a bummer that that's an Arcane series that doesn't mean a huge amount to me, but fine. And then all of a sudden, as this character was getting a close shave at a barber's, and I saw the fangs, and I was like, oh, it's a vampire. And then I noticed like the jacket and the sword, and I was like, oh my god, that's Blade. And then it was affirmed that it was in fact Blade. I just think that, again, there's so much cool shit that can be done with that character, and I think that Arcane. You're gonna have to bear with me here.
No, go for it.
Because I think I will acknowledge that I am probably. To allow myself to get excited from this game, I am separating Arcane Leon and Arcane Austin into separate entities to a greater degree than they might actually be. But fundamentally, when you look at like what the backstory is here, like Arcane Leon are the Deathloop team and Arcane Austin are the Redfall team. And again, I know that when you have two studios like that, there's a lot of shared DNA, and it's unfair of me to say Redfall was Austin's fault. Leon, the reason that Deathloop was great, and that's why I'm excited for Blade. But I am still, if you'll forgive me, I am still kind of going to do that. And
That's
I tell myself,
absolutely fair.
Deathloop was I really liked Prey, to be fair. But as someone who never quite got won over by Dishonored, Deathloop was the first game of that ilk that kind of spoke to me that Arcane had made. I really dug a lot about that game's feel, that game's loop, but also its art style, and its aesthetic, and its kind of I don't want to say vibe. That's such a horrible word, but its attitude, I guess. And when I think about everything Deathloop had going for it on those fronts, a lot of which is personified by Dinga Bakaba, the director who was there on that side stage to announce this. I can see them bringing so much of that to Blade, and the fact that they've been able to make a Blade that's even closer to home, like it's set in Paris, and like it's going to be like a French Blade, and it's going to have a lot of, I'm sure, cultural touchstones that mean a lot to them over at Arcane Leon. I think this has got so much going for it, and we've done that thing in the past of like, ooh, pair a famous IP with a famous developer. It's not something that I would have thought of, but as soon as I heard it, I was like, show me what these guys want to do with that. If they have an idea and they're passionate and it sounds like they tick both those boxes, then show me what they've got cooking. I cannot wait. That might be the thing I'm most excited for out of all of this.
And I think that's totally fair. I suppose the only reason I was a little bit lukewarm on this was because for me, I had a similar thing where I was like, vampires, Arcane, and immediately my brain went Redfall, and I was like, oh dear. Yeah. But then, for me, if like Deathloop is Arcane at their best and Redfall is Arcane at their worst, I know it's obviously two different factions of Arcane, I didn't really go in for Deathloop. I tried it. I wasn't a big fan of it. And I think the problem is when you've played two games that are very well regarded and not very well regarded, and then we're talking Marvel as well, my brain blends all that stuff together and says, this is probably something that you're going to want to skip. Obviously, that's ridiculous. We're so early on, and a company like Arcane can do a very good job with an IP like that. So there's nothing to worry about and anything to look forward to. So we'll leave it with that.
Yeah. It's interesting as well, seeing this as another kind of hint to when it comes to the direction that Marvel appear to be moving in. You know, we've talked a lot about Marvel's relationship with EA and the fact that Motive are making that Iron Man game, and then there was the Black Panther game, and then over at Skydance, was it? That are doing the Black Panther and Captain America thing. Like, there's a lot going on out there. Marvel are clearly changing their tactic away from the processes that led to the creation of Marvel's Avengers and Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy a handful of years ago. And if they can tap into less of the former and more of the latter by finding talented studios that can take their expertise and apply them to hopefully franchises that that the teams are passionate about, then I think there could be some real wins to be had for Marvel over the next decade or so.
It means it's ridiculous to think that they couldn't when you look at what they've got to work with. Like,
right.
Yeah. I mean, it's surely we're going to get some absolutely amazing games, out of that. Next up, we had Anthony Mackie, who came out to present the award for Oh my god, I forgot what award it was.
He presented best ongoing game.
Thank you, best ongoing game. So he was also there to announce the fact that Twisted Metal is getting a second TV series. I'm sure a lot of people will be excited about that because, surprisingly, I must admit, when we talked about this coming out in the first instance, I did not think this would be around that long, but it apparently did pretty well with fans, and so they're bringing it back for a season 2. Yes, ongoing game. This was an interesting one because Cyberpunk 2077 won Best Ongoing Game. Before we talk about the fact it won that, and it was a little bit controversial, I thought it was quite interesting that Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty got nominated for a few different awards as though it was a standalone, which I was like, that seems to be a bit of a cheat.
Yeah, it was nominated for Best Narrative.
I think narrative, and I think something else as well. I'm pretty sure I saw it at least twice nominated.
Idris Elba was nominated for Best Performance.
Yeah, again, I don't think you should be able to be nominated for that for a DLC.
And it made it to the final of the Player's Voice Awards. Again, listed as Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty.
Because that then surely opens the door for any game with a paid named DLC or expansion to be nominated in the awards.
Kind of, yeah. But how else do you acknowledge those? How else do you acknowledge a very good expansion?
Category, best expansion, best DLC.
Yeah, maybe.
So, for example, like we said about, we don't know anything about it, but imagine next Game Awards if they were like best sound design for God of War Ragnarok Valhalla. Like at this point, I'm like, no, I don't think you can. Anyway, no. But hey, look, I think you're right.
I get you. It's a tricky one. I don't have a good solution for that.
And that having been said, me slagging them off for being nominated for multiple awards, I think the fact that they took home Best Ongoing Games is absolutely spot on. I think they're not just Phantom Liberty, but the amount of work they've done, the amount of the updates, the patches, to get this game to the position it's at now, I think 100% for me was it when it came up on the side and they were like, when he went through the games and it was Cyberpunk 2077, I was like, yes, Cyberpunk, easy.
I think that CD Projekt Red deserve a lot of praise for the work they've done to Cyberpunk and the way they've kind of turned that ship around and the state that the game's in at the moment, and obviously the quality of the expansion. Whether it should have been nominated for awards in its own right, for anyone to argue, but like clearly, like the narrative around that game had been completely transformed, and that required a lot of work, and it required a lot of people to probably stick around fiddling with a game that they hoped to have been done with 3 years ago. And I'm sure that was a long process, and it took a lot of hard work and a lot of energy. For me, though, there's just something weird about, like, for me, it was the context, and it was the fact that the Cyberpunk 2077 was awarded Best Ongoing Game the week in which its final ever update was released, and it had been confirmed that the entire team had moved on to something else, whether it's the next Cyberpunk game or the next Witcher game. So that as of the Game Awards 2023, the winner of the Best Ongoing Game has not got a single soul working on it anymore. Meanwhile, there was another game that was nominated that dropped 3 new game modes from 3 different developers across 3 days that are going to be supported ad infinitum, and are being supported heavily already.
Give that next year.
One of which supported to the extent that 1,200 skins that people might have paid for have already been Legoified just to make them compatible with one of the. You want to talk about ongoing games? Cyberpunk 2077 isn't one for me.
See, I think for me, like that, it was a finite game that came out bad and was made good. It's not ongoing. I think
the fact that it became ongoing because it took them so long to make it good.
But see, I would have rolled the Phantom Liberty. I know it's paid for, so maybe you can say that's a bit different. But I would have. But the fact that Phantom Liberty was also released, a couple months ago. And for me, like Fortnite, I think it was far too early to have said Fortnite should win that. Next year. I'm like 100%. Give it to them next year.
But hang on, Fortnite has been an ongoing game since before Cyberpunk came out. What are you talking about?
You're talking about they've released 3 new game modes. I would have said it was far too soon.
I'm using that as a piece of evidence for what more evidence do you need that a game is being supported to within an inch of its life compared to the winner, which is now no longer being supported at all from this point forward. Like ever.
That I think that's
There are still,
I think it's tricky to say say there's a cut because we know you're not going to support it going into like now from this point on. Like for me, Game Awards is always a weird one when it should be like, when is the award period? Do you know what I mean? It's like, if it's voted for up to a certain date, then just because they didn't support it after that date, I think it's fine to give it the award up to in that year.
Here's another way of thinking about it. If Cyberpunk 2077 had came out and launched,
I knew you were going to say this,
and didn't have any bugs or any glitches, it wouldn't be an ongoing game because they wouldn't have had to have patched it as many times as they did. It became an ongoing game because it released so poorly. It took them 3 years to fix. The other nominees were Apex Legends, Final Fantasy XIV, Fortnite, and Genshin Impact. This was a category all about games that are, by their very definition, ongoing live service games that require updates and content to be delivered on a monthly basis, and all of them have been doing it for years. Cyberpunk fixed a game and just took way longer than anyone other than No Man's Sky has ever taken doing it.
It's a good point. It's funny you bring up No Man's Sky, because I would say the one thing that then troubles me is, do we then say we're not gonna acknowledge? So as we get back to the point of maybe there should be another award for like.
Well, see, No Man's Sky did get nominated for best community support, which felt like a weird kind of like.
Yeah.
Is that your way of acknowledging what No Man's Sky is doing? It's supporting its community.
This is a great point about Cyberpunk. If it had come out how it should have come out, it never would have been nominated for this award. Oh, okay. Maybe you've changed.
Again, it's a flawed system, and we need to remember that the Cyberpunk didn't win because Jeff Keighley spun a bottle. Cyberpunk won because an overwhelming majority of professionals within the games industry thought it should win. And clearly, there's enough people who agreed with that sentiment that this is a nice reflection of the hard work that a lot of people have put in for 3 years. And so, I'm not going to take that away from any of them. It was a lot of hard work, and they've done a phenomenal job. I just thought it didn't make sense within the category.
Yeah, maybe you've kind of won me over. Anyway, let's move on before I think about it too hard. Last Sentinel had a trailer, a nice little cinematic where we got to see some cool, teasers for what that game could end up being. Didn't really learn much, but looks cool. First Descendant's got a trailer. It's got a summer 2024 release date. The First Descendant, sorry. Space Marine 2 looks sick. And we've got a trailer for that, and we have a release date of September 9th, 2024, which is very cool as well. So yeah, we had a fast-paced little triple hit there of decent trailers.
Yeah.
Some nice little things to look forward to in the future. Any you wanted to flag up?
Not particular. Like the Last Sentinel, when they were describing it, I thought this could be cool. Because hey, surprise, it's yet another studio that are able to talk about the fact that they've got Rockstar veterans amongst their ranks. But that, as we've seen, as we've discussed with, the Houses and the Benzies of the world, that doesn't mean anything until you show us a game. The Last Sentinel didn't look like a game yet. It looked like a CG trailer for something very stylized that could be very cool. The First Descendant was more of a game, but it didn't really sort of, tick any boxes for me, like based on what I've seen of it so far, but want to keep an eye on. And then Space Marine 2, it's just nice to have a release date, nice to have something that we can look, because I know that game's been knocked around a little bit release date wise. I hope that September date sticks, and I hope it's good.
And then something a little bit different from the Game Awards, because we had Old Gods of Asgard perform Herald of Darkness, which was from Alan Wake 2, and it was this little, not just musical bit, but also like a little acty theatrical scene, which was very cool, and I thought it was a nice touch to
I'm
just
glad you liked it. Okay,
yeah, put a little a little bit of something special into that point of the show.
I was sitting there thinking, I wonder how this is playing for people who haven't played Alan Wake 2, because within the context of the game, it's a wonderful piece of music and a wonderful sequence. Removed from the context of the game, it's somehow even more wonderful, and yet, like, that's me having got that context and put it to one side. It probably looked really strange to some people, because it was, like, hang on a second, am I watching like an Alan Wake musical where one guy is playing Alan Wake and another guy is voicing Alan Wake, and there's this other guy who's like hosting it, and then there's this weird band called the Old God. And
I had no idea what was going on, but I enjoyed it.
you'll enjoy it even more when you know what's going on. And like the reason that there's a guy playing Alan Wake and there's a guy voicing Alan Wake, when you know more about the old gods of Asgard, who, without going too much, the two kind of more prominent figures from the old gods of Asgard are characters within Alan Wake as well as members of this band. Fascinating, but also great. Like when we talk about the incremental improvements that the Game Awards can make year on year and the lessons it can learn, there have been times when a spot like this would have been filled with, insert pop star here, celebrating a new single and promoting a new single, and then hosts presenting an award afterwards. To get something game centric in there, and they did that with Hellblade 2 and with Final Fantasy as well. I think it's much more appropriate, and another example of the ways that the Game Awards has grown for the better over the years. Because this meant a lot more than fucking. I don't even know who's a pop star. This meant a lot more than Dua Lipa coming on stage, doing a single, and then saying, and the award, now introducing the developers of GTFO.
Yeah, that would have been weird. No, I love that they're doing this, and I think music is such a big part of gaming as well. In that it's really nice to have, to like take it and run with it. I remember the years ago when we were waiting for Ghost of Tsushima and The Last of Us Part 2 to come out, and how music was such a big part of the whole like advertisement and anticipation of those games. And Sony just went ham on. We've got people playing music from those games as like to really push the aesthetic and the ambience for those titles, and I think it was fantastic. And I like that that's something that the Games Awards are doing as well. And it wasn't just this as well. We also had the song being sung from Resident Evil, Final Fantasy, which I thought was a really nice touch as well. Like I think this is, not really that was less my bag, but I still enjoyed it. I thought it was a nice little touch. So yeah, very cool. I'm going to take a moment, though, of our show right now to do something a little bit different. Not like the Game Awards. I'm not going to do a musical aside, but what I am going to do is say thank you to some absolutely fantastic people. And these are the patrons who have gone over to patreon.com/SuperShow to support us. And they support us week in, week out, and they really do keep the lights on. They allow us to sit and talk at length about things like the Game Awards and talk your ears off about what we think about them and the awards and the controversies. So thank you very much to all of them. There are some names that you can see on screen right now. And I would also like to give a shout out to some people, to Aaron Cameron, Athletic Gravy, Brimstone, Ice Nook Rock Salt, Jesper Camdan Nielsen, Pastors Guild, and the big dogs, the members of the board. It's Bretzi, aka Shellshock, Geometric Potter, Hacksaw Book Reed, Manuel Guerrero, and Peaswad. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you for all of your support. It really does touch us and surprise us where people decide to keep supporting us week in, week out. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonesy, for keeping your thanking of the patrons to within 30 seconds. Although I will say, you began that by saying that you couldn't do that in musical form. I beg to differ. I think that very easily could have been a musical thank you to the patrons. And I think that's something we need to hear at least by next week.
Well, you'll be waiting a lot longer than that. I'm sorry to say. Shit. So there we go. But let's crack on. Let's get back to the award show, because next up we got a trailer for GTFO, the final chapter. I have never played. Oh no, that's not true. I've briefly played GTFO and then I GTFO'd and never played it again.
Oh dear. I never even played it. So there you go.
Okay. The next game that we got to see a trailer for was Den of Wolves, that was announced with a CG trailer from 10 Chambers. Oh, this was the one. Oh God. I can't remember. I remember this for some reason.
This is the GTFO devs. So they showed the final chapter, and then they brought out the guy from 10 Chambers who was like, our next game is Den of Wolves.
Oh, that was it. Yeah.
And it kind of had like a weird kind of, very kind of like sci-fi glitchy kind of thing, like creepy mask vibe. I don't know. It's just
yes, it was kind of weird. Yeah, I was like not really sure what was going on, but hey, fair enough.
It's a sci-fi heist game.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Remains to be seen. We then got a trailer for sci-fi extraction shooter Exoborn, which sounds cool. Again, too sure about what that's going to end up being like. Extraction shooter. It's called Exoborn. There you go. That's all we know, basically. Then we had a voice actor, Matt Mercer, introducing a new trailer for the MetaQuest title Asgard's Wrath 2. I'm all about MetaQuest. Like, I need to get back into VR in a big way. Like, it's been too long. And I was looking at the MetaQuest 3 the other day thinking like, ooh. But do you know what then happened? Chris also shared with me a video for the is it the big screen 10 or something? I can't even bloody remember what it's called. It's like super small VR glasses, which are really lightweight, and they give you like a molded faceplate, and it's like 1,500 quid or some crazy bullshit. And I was like, oh yeah, maybe that's what you need to get back into VR. But
oh god, yeah, no, that old chestnut.
I
took the easy route of just never getting into it.
I'm excited now that my Vive is old enough that if I got a new VR kit, I'm going to be like, wow, this is amazing again. So
yeah, I remember trying to bully you into getting an Index because I really wanted to come to your house and ignore you for 6 hours while I played all of Half-Life Alyx.
See, I haven't even finished Half-Life Alyx. It's because I don't have enough space. I'm trying to move house, people, and it's not going well. I'm still in the same house. Next up, this has been a little bit divisive. Not this part of the show, but this TV show. Because the cast of the Fallout TV show came on to give us a trailer for their TV show and also to award the best adaptation this year. So, unsurprisingly, they were the ones to come out and give it. And that, unsurprisingly, went to The Last of Us. Very good TV show. I have some criticisms. I'm not going to air them here.
You hinted at them last week, right? With regards to your feelings on the Super Mario Brothers movie, for example, and how that might have been better suited for such a category.
Yeah, I thought Super Mario Brothers movie was very good, and I wouldn't have minded at all if even won. But no, the trailer for the Fallout TV show is what I think some people don't like the look of it, and they're a little bit. I don't know. I think there's criticism I've seen relates to things like the look, the style. It's too colourful. It's not dark and grungy enough. They've kind of shat on the imagery of Fallout, if you like. I think it looks great. Like, I think it looks fantastic. I like that it seems to be a mashup of things I recognise and things I don't.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah.
I thought that first trailer was encouraging. I liked the sense of humour. I think Fallout TV show, you could go one or two ways with it, but I think you need to embrace the humour of the situation, at least to a certain extent, and they've done that in a fun way. Looks like they'd also embrace, some of the more over-the-top violence present in the show, and there were some, great character designs, enemy designs, and locations that looked very familiar to what we all know from playing the games. That it looks like there are reasons to be hopeful. So yeah, I'm down. I'm going to give it a go when it comes out.
And talking about hopeful, once bitten, twice shy can get out of here, because Sean Murray came to the stage to give us a trailer for their new game, Light No Fire. I thought this is the thing that I think I was most excited about in the entire show. And what's weird is it also looks a bit like No Man's Sky. So, which makes total sense. They're the developers behind No Man's Sky, so why should it not? But then at the same time, shouldn't that make you a little wary because of what happened in No Man's Sky? But I think not. I think, hey, they've had a hell of a long time to improve in areas where maybe they needed to, and to clarify their message. And one of the things they showed immediately for this was, hey, this is a multiplayer game. Here's all the footage captured in multiplayer as people are playing this multiplayer game.
Yeah.
So no, I like that they did that. It's in case people didn't see it, fantasy open world single planet game, which the idea being that rather than be able to explore an infinite number of planets, you can infinitely explore a single planet, I suppose. Procedurally generated, massive mountains, flying dragons, building bases. Yeah, I was excited about this.
Yeah, as soon as I saw this, I couldn't help but think of you, because you are, I think, still to this day, certainly when I think back to you prior to the release of No Man's Sky, the biggest admirer of everything that Hello Games was certainly hopeful of doing when they laid down the gauntlet at the time, and a big fan of a lot of what they actually did and would go on to do, of course.
I played a lot of it over the years, not for a long time now, actually, to be fair, but
yeah. And I actually agree with you in terms of like the potential for optimism around this game. Like, they've been at No Man's Sky for 10 years. They are still a very small team, but when you look at what they've been able to achieve on No Man's Sky as a small team, it's quite remarkable. Like some of the additions they've made over the years have been really impressive and really eye-catching. You watch some of those trailers now and you just think, my God, this game is sprawling. And like, yes, they've been working on it for a long time now, but they've been working on this game for 5 years, and they learned a lot of lessons first time around around how to promote a game and what to say and not say about a game. And if you do get invited onto any talk shows, remember that clip might live on in infamy for years to come. And so choose your words carefully. Sean Murray has learnt all those things firsthand. I think they're going to be careful about what they promise with this game and what they deliver relative to what they've promised. But talking about the game itself just for a second, I think the promise of like a procedurally generated, massive single planet with enough kind of like it appeals to me a lot more at face value than an infinite number of like simple planets. And when I think about the potential for exploration there, when Sean Murray described wanting to make, as you pointed out, mountains that were actually miles high, and like the significance of like what it might be to traverse a world that, when put to scale, is far bigger than our own. Like that's a really engaging kind of little sort of rabbit hole to go down. And I hope they pull it off. I'm excited to see how that game turns out.
We then had the announcement for Best Action Adventure Game, which was presented by Simulu, my little ankle buddy, as he hobbled onto the stage. So this award was taken by Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, unsurprisingly. We then had an announcement for a Final Fantasy 16 DLC, Echoes of the Fallen, and The Rising Tide. Yeah, very cool. Like Final Fantasy 16 is something that I would love to get into, and I'm tempted to.
I wish I liked it more. I played 8 hours and fell off.
Yeah, because after I'd finished playing that demo, I was like, I do want to play more of this. I'm keen to see where this goes, what happens, but it didn't feel like the right time, and hasn't yet. So we'll see.
Okay.
Remedy then snuck out an announcement for Alan Wake 2's New Game Plus mode. I don't remember seeing that. I'm not even sure what their New Game Plus is going to look like.
They did it while they were accepting an award. It was very cheeky.
Oh, okay, I see. So yeah, because so Alan Wake 2 did pretty well at the awards. They were one of the games I think that was nominated that was obviously was going to win some stuff. I mean, it's very well received. It's done some very cool stuff, so unsurprising it did win. So they got awards for Best Game Direction, Best Narrative, and Best Art Direction, which is why we got to see lots of Sam Lake accepting rewards and being a generally cool guy with his cool guy accent. I'd love to sound like that. He's got such a cool fucking accent.
A cool guy accent, the cool Max Payne face. It's a pretty damn good combo.
It is, isn't it? It works really well. Yeah, there you go. So then we had a shadow drop for the finals. I missed that as well. Like the finals is one of those weird esports-esque games that I'm like, okay, this is going to do really well and get really big. Probably is already, but I have managed to literally follow nothing of it. So what was the shadow drop? What were they actually giving away?
No, it's out.
Oh, that was it. That it was coming out. Okay,
yeah, the finals is out.
Oh, I didn't realize it was out. The last thing we saw about the finals, obviously, was the little AI controversy about commentary in the game and how that was going to actually roll out.
Yeah.
There you go. I didn't even realize it was out. I was wondering what the shadow drop was, but it's out. You can get it now. So, do you know what? I would like to try the finals. I'm going to be honest. I'll be terrible at it.
It's on consoles as well, so I think you can download it on PS5 if you want to give it a go on there.
Boom.
I saw it. I'm considering doing the same.
And then a very cool final reveal at the end of the show. One that I watch and I know loads of people love and are very happy about, but one that when I see, I'm like, oh, okay, fair enough. Monster Hunter Wilds. We got a nice big reveal. It's coming in 2025. A lot of fans of Monster Hunter. So yeah, very happy for them. They got a nice big reveal to finish the whole show reveal-wise off. But then, Jamie, it came to the big one, the game of the year, and they got Timothée Chalamet, the man of the moment, King of June and Willy Wonka.
On YouTube.
And YouTube. YouTube. Why YouTube? Is he on YouTube?
You really didn't watch the last hour, did you?
No.
There's a Timothy
I didn't
Chalamet,
know.
obviously. I guess we're gonna have to get used to this.
No, I
being,
did
like,
watch the last hour, but I watched it like at 8 o'clock in the morning after 3 hours
Oh,
sleep,
right,
going
that was
like,
it. Okay.
what's going on? Yeah, one of them.
Basically, Timothy Chalamet used to be a YouTuber and used to make modded Xbox 360 controllers.
Did he?
And and his YouTube channel was called Modded Controller 360. And so Jeff Keighley introduced him as like the star of Wonka and June, but better known on YouTube as Modded Controller 360. It's Timothy Chalamet.
I missed that. I definitely missed that. So he came on to announce the Game of the Year, which has led to some of my most fun little Twitter interactions. Not me taking part, but seeing other people's interactions, which was the fact that Baldur's Gate 3 won Game of the Year, which has spawned endless arguments on Twitter about people comparing Spider-Man 2 to Baldur's Gate 3 and saying what a shame it was that that Spider-Man 2 didn't win, and just like comparing combat from Spider-Man, comparing, just movement and just general gameplay, and just being like, how did Baldur's Gate 3 win? You had to be under a rock to not know that Baldur's Gate 3 was going to win Game of the Year, right?
I mean, it was the biggest critical darling of the entire year.
The Larian guy wore armor. He knew he was going to win. Come on.
I thought that something like Alan Wake 2 had a real outside chance if there had been like a weird split. And you know how sometimes when people are voting on these things, that if things are torn in two different directions, and maybe that allows room for someone else like a dark horse to. And clearly, by virtue of the fact that it got things like game direction and narrative ahead of Baldur's Gate 3, that Alan Wake 2 did have something going for it. But yeah, it was never really in doubt that Baldur's Gate was going to take it. Even if you wanted to take the most rudimentary kind of way of establishing consensus that there is out there and looked at the Metacritic, like Baldur's Gate 3 was an absolute behemoth, an absolute monster. And the debate about whether or not it was good, and people who think games need to be big and cinematic and quadruple A to be good, raged on for the entire year. It wasn't just, yes, it reared its head again in light of this award, but we can't be surprised that there are people out there who aren't capable of thinking beyond what they see in Twitter GIFs. It's just the way that the internet works.
No, yeah, absolutely. I thought it was a very well-deserved win. Fantastic they did, like I said, very critically acclaimed, fan acclaimed.
96 at the moment on Metacritic, which
massive number of players
after 109 reviews. Sorry, 110 reviews. It's averaging 96. Like that's unbelievable. Like that's best game of all time territory.
See, it's interesting because even in chat right now, we've got interesting like things people are saying, which I disagree with some, agree with others, but I don't think it nails the argument. No, okay, just as an example, this is not me criticizing whoever's saying this. Is just saying like why I don't necessarily agree with like the characterization.
Shame.
So okay. I'm not even gonna name a shame. Not a shame because people can have their own opinions. So, say for example, absolutely fair. How can you make a comparison between the two? It's apples and oranges in terms of impact and the games have had. It's no competition. I completely agree with that. There's no comparison between the two. Baldur's Gate 3 absolutely deserved it. Spider-Man is a Batman Arkham recycled like game for the millionth time. So I completely disagree with that characterization. I don't think you can just say a third-person superhero game is therefore an Arkham game. I think the two feel, having someone who's played loads of Spider-Man games and Spider-Man 2, all the Arkham games, right up to today, and I don't think they're similar at all. Like, I don't think they feel similar. They're similar in that they're comic book games, superhero games, but without even playing Baldur's Gate 3, I think it should have won. I don't think it's that difficult. Like, I think we've talked before about impact. Spider-Man 2 is a game which, is a lot of fun. I platinumed, I loved it. I haven't even played Baldur's Gate 3, but I can already tell you that Spider-Man 2 is not like an impactful game. I think once the trilogy finishes out, I think we'll talk about what a great, fun trilogy it was. I don't think anyone's going to be really harking on it, that it did anything, that it made any massive impact. I think to say they were very good games. Dissimilarly, I think Baldur's Gate 3 actually may have changed shit in the gaming industry, in some ways. And also, I hate the comparison between combat. Like the combat, when you compare the two, yeah, I agree. Combat in Baldur's Gate 3 looks crap compared to Spider-Man 2, but they're completely different games. How can you compare them? It's like saying combat in chess is not as good as in the UFC. Like, so what are you trying to... how's that a comparison? Doesn't make any sense. So that's what I think to those Twitter trolls.
It's a tricky one. I broadly speaking agree with everything you're saying. And one thing we are very much aligned on is our feelings on Baldur's Gate 3, despite having not played Baldur's Gate 3. I almost don't feel like I don't need to have played Baldur's Gate 3 to acknowledge and respect whatever everyone else has said about it, and see through the bits of gameplay that I've sat down and watched, and the time that I have spent watching people play Baldur's Gate 3, that it does seem to be true to the kind of the things that people have said about it. It's also just something it's interesting that there's no reluctance on my part, and I'm not saying there was reluctance last year, but when we were here last year and we're talking about Elden Ring, there's a part of me that was kind of bummed out that I felt like I would never truly see in Elden Ring what other people saw in Elden Ring, but there is a universality to what I've heard people describe Baldur's Gate 3's being able to achieve, that makes me very impressed with what I've heard in terms of its commitment to kind of how broad and how ever evolving and how diverse it can be in terms of the way it manifests some of those D&D elements and those tabletop gaming elements as a video game. We talk a lot. We've talked ad nauseum over the years about the role that player choice actually has an impact in games, and the amount of agency players have to change stories. And to change the dynamics of a video game. And it feels like Baldur's Gate 3 tapped into that in a way that goes beyond a lot of what we've seen in even some of the most celebrated titles of recent years. And I have to kind of take my hat off to that, in spite of having not experienced it firsthand.
I think for Baldur's Gate 3 is one of the... And like I said, without having played it, it's one of the first games that I've seen so many people talk about and discuss how it genuinely seems like a table... And this is... And on my own experience of tabletop RPGs is playing them with you and Chris, and Chris coming out with ludicrous things you were going to do, and the dungeon master very, very effortlessly weaving them into the narrative and making it funny and work and interesting and highlights.
Yeah,
the Baldur's Gate seems to have the same ability in a game, and I'm like, that's something special, and one I'm sure I will play in the future and I will enjoy.
A great story for Larian, like the fact that they put in such hard graft and made in Divinity Original Sin and Divinity Original Sin 2, again, massively acclaimed games that couldn't quite find that broad mainstream appeal. Even when they got brought over to consoles and stuff like that, those games getting 9s and 10s out of 10 wasn't enough to make them truly mainstream. And they worked hard, and they got the Baldur's Gate license, which is a classic, all-time RPG license, and they did it justice, and they did it in an interesting way, and they did it through a form of early access, and they kept supporting that game, and they kept adding to that game, and it took a long time for it to eventually come out. And I'm glad that it was orchestrated in the way it was, where it did come out with kind of a bang rather than a whimper, and the critics were there and ready. And some of those critics took a long time to get their reviews together because there's a lot of game there, but everyone was unanimous in their voices, and it just feels like a real success story. And I'm glad that guy who sat there for 3 hours in a full suit of armor didn't do it for no reason,
Yes, agreed. But before we, I was going to make a joke about this being nearly 3 hours. But it's not. It's only 2 hours and 35 minutes at this point, so we're not quite there yet. But before we finish out this epic show off the back of the Game Awards, I should just mention, out of the notes you've put at the end of this doc, Jamie, we have to mention it because he feels like he needs a mention. Matan Evan was at the Game Awards, but he was issued with a trespassing warning, assuming that he should not go anywhere, that he should not be, that he's not allowed to go, and that he would get in a lot of trouble for it.
Yeah.
Matt and Evan, in case people don't remember, is the guy from a couple of years ago who made it onto the stage and said,
That was last year.
no, he was the year before.
It was the Elden Ring acceptance speech.
Yeah, but that wasn't. Was that last year? I thought no. Last year wasn't last year the other guy.
No, the other guy was at Gamescom.
Oh, that was Gamescom. Oh, was it really last year? Is that all happened? That was 1 year ago that we.
That was Elden. That was Elden Ring.
God,
winning Game of the Year.
Oh, okay. I thought Matt and Evan was 2
show.
years ago. How's that kid? Okay, that feels like a lot longer ago than it was.
He's had a big year.
He has had a big year. But do you know what? My favourite quote from him isn't even from the Game Awards. It is the name 3 books.
I can't believe I'm talking to these illiterate people.
You're illiterate. Name 3 books. So everyone in the chat, I would like you to name 3 books, please, to prove that you are not illiterate.
And Game of Thrones does not count.
No, it does, but you've got to call it by the proper name.
Okay.
Otherwise, it doesn't count. There you go.
Matt and Evan, also known as the Bill Clinton kid.
That was the Bill Clinton thing. That was it. Bill Clinton.
Yeah. That was the 2022 Game Awards, 8th of December 2022. After Hidetaka Miyazaki and the From Software team accepted the Game of the Year award for Elden Ring.
There you go.
Hey,
yeah.
my turn. Real quick, I want to thank everybody and say that I just want to nominate this award to my Reformed Orthodox Rabbi, Bill Clinton. Thank you, everybody.
There you go. Name 3 books.
Nominate this award.
Yeah.
Oh, it's good. It's good.
There you go. And with that...
Hideo Kojima should cast him.
Oh my goodness, he should.
Put him in OD.
He should. Yeah, he should. He absolutely should. But hey, with that, thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you for joining us for this long Super Show as we went through the trials and tribulations of the Game Awards, of which there were a few trials, to be fair. They did pretty well this year. They didn't have too many controversies, and it seemed to all go down without a hitch, which is pretty good. Thank you, Jamie. Thanks so much for joining me. Thank you for writing up all of the stuff that went on in the awards. Appreciate it. Appreciate you. Thank you everyone who joined us live in chat, and if you are watching out there in future land, if you're watching or listening to this on podcasting platforms, wherever you are, drop us a like, drop us a comment, say hello, any of that good stuff, and we'll see you next week. So thank you very much.
Bye.